Amic Leo introduces himself as a lowly jobless player, the kind of bottom-tier grunt everyone loves to mock, but his entire party just got wiped out, and he's clearly hiding something about the disaster. Then a wall of flashing red warning signs floods his vision, and Amic Leo stares at the interface as his survival instincts kick into overdrive, because a massive, unidentified anomaly has just materialized inside the dungeon, revealing a monstrous grin that looks way too hungry for comfort. And as the reality of this encounter sinks in, Amic Leo realizes his entire fate is hanging by a thread. Since 10 years ago, the game merged with the real world, spawning dungeons everywhere and creating a new class of survivors known as players. And just 2 hours earlier, the dangerous non-ecumene zone was still relatively quiet, where the team was busy grinding for a bonus under the watchful eyes of their superiors. So when a teammate barks at Amic Leo to pick up the pace, he plays the role of the submissive lackey perfectly, even though the other players openly mock him for being a jobless weakling who only survived non-ecumene by pure dumb luck. And beneath his calm facade, Amic Leo finds the whole situation incredibly irritating, especially since the high-level Sakurada hospital dungeon is currently overrun by a dangerous presence, and he still has not awakened a proper job class despite barely escaping that hellish encounter. So for years he has been forced to scrape by as a low-ranking guide for other parties. While B-rank jurist Luca struts around acting like the boss of this operation, and when Luca demands a status update, Amic Leo keeps his head down to stay out of the firing line, pointing out a potential farming spot between the hospital and the city center where they can make easy money, which makes Luca grin as he decides to lead the group into a dangerous B-rank dungeon for a quick payout. Amic Leo realizes the central area is a death trap, and he tries to warn Luca against pushing forward, explaining that the dungeon intel is outdated and far too dangerous for their team, but the rest of the party just ignores his concerns, and then Luca violently grabs Amic Leo by the throat, hoisting him into the air to silence his protests, mocking Amic Leo for being a jobless loser who should just follow orders, which forces Amic Leo to back down immediately to survive the encounter. While Luca threatens him with further abuse for daring to speak up, so Amic Leo pretends to submit, silently plotting his eventual escape. Although Luca does not trust him and keeps a weapon drawn, threatening to kill him if he tries anything clever, and Amic Leo keeps his hands raised to show he has no intention of fighting back, while Luca grips his blade tightly, ready to strike at the slightest provocation. Then Luca dismisses him with a look of pure disgust. And Amic Leo internalizes his rage while playing the part of the pathetic weakling, leading the group deeper into the ruins of the central area, where Luca arrogantly dismisses the obvious environmental hazards, leaving Amic Leo to calculate his best window to abandon the party, and suddenly a high-level monster reveals itself to the group. A swarm of monsters charges the party, forcing the group into a desperate defensive formation. So Luca steps forward to command the front line with a massive burst of flame, and he easily clears the initial wave to show off his B-rank power, which leaves his party members in awe of his overwhelming magical output. Although Amic Leo watches him with a mix of jealousy and hidden calculation, suddenly sensing a strange, lingering energy signature pulsing through the area, and he realizes something even more powerful is stalking them from the shadows. So he warns the group to retreat, but Luca mocks his instincts as useless, just as the floor beneath them begins to shatter under immense pressure, causing the ground to collapse and throwing the entire party into a chaotic scramble, and the group is violently dispersed as the floor crumbles into a deep pit. Then Luca immediately blames Amic Leo for the trap and threatens his life, while a dark, ominous figure looms over them from the surrounding gloom. Although Amic Leo notices the entity's detection signature suddenly cut to zero, and the party members scramble to recover their footing after the unexpected plummet, then the boss monster reveals itself and demands a twisted game with the survivors, while a system mission appears, tasking them with eliminating the target to secure the treasure, so Luca leans into the fight with maniacal laughter, eager to incinerate everything. But Amic Leo notices the creature's energy signature flicker and vanish entirely, and he realizes too late that they have been baited into a much deadlier encounter. Luca desperately rallies his scattered party to stay alert, yet a cold sweat breaks out across his face as the silence deepens. The monstrous creature lunges from the shadows with terrifying speed, forcing the party members to draw their steel in a frantic bid for survival. One of the fighters takes a direct hit and is sent flying through the air, while the boss monster laughs, relishing the chaos she has unleashed upon them. Her laughter echoes through the chamber as she tears through the remaining combatants. Carnage litters the floor until only a few survivors remain standing. Amic Leo checks his system interface but finds absolutely zero data on the entity. The monster closes the distance again to strike him down, and he takes a heavy blow that leaves him reeling back, crashing into the cold stone floor while struggling to catch his breath. The creature looms over the others, picking them off one by one, leaning in close to Amic Leo with a twisted grin as she catches his scent. He stares at her in mounting confusion, trying to process her strange behavior. She calls him daddy with a manic intensity that stops him cold. Amic Leo is visibly shaken by the bizarre and terrifying claim. His mind races to reconcile this insane encounter with reality. The monster continues to stalk him, convinced she has found her father, while he desperately scans the room for a tactical opening to escape. The monster keeps chanting about taking Amic Leo home, and he struggles to comprehend how his life spiraled into this nightmare. She ignores his protests and lunges to drag him into her maw. Amic Leo stares into the void of those massive teeth, certain this is the end. System message flashes as he seemingly dies. Unlocking a hidden class called Dread Keeper, his eyes snap open in a state of confusion. Questioning how he survived the encounter, he finds himself sitting on his own couch, alive and completely unharmed. Realization hits him as he confirms he's back inside his own house. The television news broadcasts the date as January 30th, 2100. Amek Leo recognizes the timeline and calculates that the apocalypse is still 5 hours away. He processes the impossible truth that he has regressed 10 years into the past. Celebration fills the room as he accepts his second chance at a normal life. The joy is short-lived when the monster suddenly reappears behind him. Amek Leo is slammed into the ground by the creature's massive limbs. She looms over him, famished and demanding to know why he is resisting. Terror grips him as he realizes he was pulled back into the fight. The entity pins him down, obsessing over his scent and taste. Panic sets in when he understands she's still trying to devour him. She begins to lick his face, displaying a twisted and predatory affection. The monster prepares to feed, leaving Amek Leo trapped in her horrific grip. Amek Leo is losing his mind as the ravenous monster demands to be fed. He scrambles to pacify her by promising to cook something right away. The creature known as Suzuko stops her assault and turns her attention to the mountain of chicken. Offering up the entire stash of food seems to be the only way to survive. Suzuko pulls him into a suffocating embrace while she gorges herself on the meal. She clings to him and calls him daddy, completely blurring the line between predator and pet. Amek Leo questions his own sanity while trapped in her unhinged display of affection. Watching her devour the fried chicken, he starts to realize he might have an opportunity here. She eats with a terrifying intensity that forces him to rethink his survival strategy. Observing her distraction, he starts to calculate if food is the key to managing her behavior. A system window suddenly pops up, revealing he has somehow acquired a unique profession. The interface identifies his job as Dread Keeper and classifies Suzuko as a B-rank kept boss. He realizes that controlling this monster might be his ticket to power. The potential to subjugate other boss-level entities begins to take root in his mind. A system warning flashes that Suzuko is in starvation mode and will consume anything if not fed. Her persistent hunger trait is a ticking time bomb he has to manage. 5 minutes pass and she is already demanding more, proving her appetite is nearly bottomless. Amek Leo steps up to assert his authority and demands she show some patience. He promises to keep her fed, successfully calming her down for the time being. Playing the role of a father figure becomes his strategy to dominate the coming dungeons. Suzuko interprets the head pats as a signal to lash out. Amek Leo realizes far too late that his nurturing act backfired. Her crushing bear hug signals that playtime is officially over. Gasping for air, Amek Leo begs for some personal space before his ribs snap. Breaking news flashes on the screen regarding a sudden dungeon shift. The report confirms the Black Forest dungeon has manifested ahead of schedule. Checking the monitor, Amek Leo cannot believe the timeline has shifted this drastically. The realization hits that they are woefully unprepared for an early arrival. Dark energy ripples through the city skyline as the rift tears open. A massive, multi-eyed monstrosity manifests right in front of them. The system issues a dire warning that the Black Forest has fully descended. Stumbling back, Amek Leo struggles to process the sheer scale of the threat. Suzuko catches sight of the intruder and decides to claim territory. Her eyes lock onto the giant eyeball with a clear, murderous intent. The system confirms the entity is neutralized, releasing him from its gaze. Victory belongs to Suzuko, who immediately hoists Amek Leo back into her arms. Desperate to regain his footing, Amek Leo kicks and screams for a release. She ignores his protests, already fixated on the next meal she intends to hunt. The possessiveness in her glare makes it clear that he is not going anywhere. Reeling from the physical and mental toll, Amek Leo tries to steady his breathing. The system flags a strange kept monster detection, warning that the Black Forest curse is actively escalating. Amek Leo realizes the gravity of the situation as the interface warns of a 72-hour deadline for dungeon clearance. Failure to act means permanent confinement in the Black Forest, and thorny vines immediately erupt from the ground. These thick roots swarm the area, but Suzuko effortlessly shreds through the vegetation with her multiple arms. A spectral demonic guardian emerges from the shadows to challenge them, watching the chaos unfold. Amek Leo can only mutter about the sheer hell of this scenario. He is already mentally exhausted from trying to manage Suzuko. Sensing fresh prey, Suzuko ignores the ambient threats and lunges toward the nearest target. Her predatory grin widens as she eyes the monsters, clearly viewing them as nothing more than a snack. She charges into the pack of demonic forest entities with reckless abandon, tearing through their ranks. Suzuko makes quick work of the monsters while the system logs her experience gains. She begins devouring them one by one, her hunger insatiable and raw. The system monitors her rising hunger gauge as she continues to massacre the forest spirits. After consuming the tree-type monsters, the system notes a wild conversion effect that surges through her. She tears another spirit apart, the power of her feast visibly radiating off her. Amek Leo watches the system update as her hunger levels finally stabilize. Turning his attention to the curse itself, he notices a strange, pulsing energy he has never seen before. The realization hits that this is the Narus dungeon, and he was completely unprepared for the Black Forest's true nature. He concludes that the only significant difference here is the presence of Suzuko herself. She offers him a piece of her kill, but Amek Leo recoils, desperately hoping to keep his distance from her hunger. Amek Leo realizes the dungeon system is actively targeting Suzuko. High-ranking Kyo entity manifests with the sole intent of eliminating her. He clutches his head while processing the 72-hour deadline to clear this nightmare. The sheer scale of the Black Forest feels impossible for him to navigate. Then he senses an overwhelming power surging toward their position. The Kyo beast lunges at Ame Leo, forcing him into a desperate retreat. Suzuko intercepts the attack, triggering a wild conversion that warps the battlefield. Energy shockwaves ripple outward as she engages the monster head-on. She multitasks, using her newfound appendages to dismantle the creature piece by piece. Suzuko checks on Ame Leo, her eyes glowing with the raw power she just consumed. The realization dawns on him that she successfully absorbed the Kyo's unique skill. Magical energy begins to radiate from her very being as the skill activates. Ame Leo shouts a warning when he spots another lethal threat materializing. An explosive impact tears through the surrounding environment. Time shifts back to 24 hours after the Black Forest first appeared in Naru City. Survivors scramble for cover as an arrogant figure stands atop the debris. Luca, a self-proclaimed beta tester, commands the panicked crowd to follow his lead. The ground beneath the survivors collapses while they attempt to flee the sector. Luca stares in disbelief at the creature looming over the ruins. Identifying the entity as a terrifying Rank 2 Kyo, he prepares to face it alone. The survivors panic as the Rank 2 Kyo defies their expectations. Luca steps forward to calm the crowd with a promise of resolution. He channels his energy while declaring himself a job holder. A massive bolt of power erupts into the sky from his position. The beam slams directly into the towering Kyo. Debris scatters across the ruins as the creature takes the full force. Hayashi Miki observes the aftermath from a distance, radiating her own power while she steps into the fray. She dismisses the threat with a cold, unimpressed glare. Luca basks in the crowd's adoration as he claims credit for the kill. Survivors cheer for their savior while Hayashi Miki remains in the shadows. She questions Luca's manipulative nature despite their short acquaintance. Vines suddenly lash out from the ground to ambush her. Hayashi Miki demands to know why he intervened to save her. The beta tester invites her to join his growing party of elite job holders. Luca introduces himself with a grin while offering her a path to heroism. She doubts the viability of his plan given the increasing strength of the dungeon. Vines continue to surge through the city ruins as the threat level rises. Kyo revels in the chaos with Suzuko trapped in her clutches. The realization hits her that following Luca's orders might lead to her death. Kyo recognizes Luca from a decade ago, thinking a team-up might actually be worth it. Suddenly, a massive animated tree traps Suzuko within its wooden branches. The entire structure vibrates with a hungry, monstrous intent as smaller creatures swarm toward it. These entities view the trapped captive as nothing more than a fresh snack. Watching the swarming horde makes Kyo lose her composure. Debris and massive roots tear through the city, proving this is not just a simple plant. Hayashi Miki watches the chaos unfold, unimpressed by the overreaction of those around her. Luca catches the shifting tide of the dungeon and realizes things are spiraling out of control. Giant limbs smash into the architecture, pulverizing everything in their path. Shouting over the rumble, Luca catches sight of Hayashi Miki standing in the line of fire. The realization forces Hayashi Miki to scramble for safety as the ground gives way. Stone foundations fracture under the pressure of the advancing wooden threat. Kyo clings to life amidst the destruction, wondering how she survived the initial impact. Hayashi Miki corners her with a sharp, taunting grin, freezing the space around them. She commands Kyo to stop struggling. Terrified by the sudden display of power, Kyo tries to pass the whole event off as a mistake. Hayashi Miki does not buy the excuse and mocks Kyo for her blatant cowardice. The ground splits open while Hayashi Miki narrowly drags Kyo away from the collapsing ruins. Kyo's target emerges from the shadows, revealing a grotesque, multi-limbed form that hunts them down. Hayashi Miki and the trembling Kyo find themselves cornered as the monster closes in. Kyo spots Suzuko in the thick of the chaos, but Hayashi Miki steps in front, radiating a surge of blue energy to take command. Declaring herself the protector, she prepares to face the monstrous threat head-on. The multi-limbed entity lunges toward them while Hayashi Miki holds her ground. Noticing the beast targeting Suzuko instead, Hayashi Miki shifts her focus. Kyo realizes in a panic that Hayashi Miki has completely misidentified their ally as a hostile. Launching herself forward, Hayashi Miki unleashes a high-speed strike. The energy blast spirals outward, pinning the monster and Suzuko in a lethal vortex. Blue light tears through the combat zone, burying the creature and the girl under a barrage of force. Watching the reckless display, Kyo screams a warning as the dust settles. Hayashi Miki pauses to assess the damage, confident in her strike. Spotting a break in the monster's defense, she channels every ounce of her power for a finishing blow, landing the hit. She grins as the impact connects with a heavy thud. Suzuko takes the brunt of the attack and goes down, leaving Kyo to realize the massive misunderstanding. Rushing toward the wreckage, Kyo desperately checks the aftermath of the collision. Praying the girl is not dead, she frantically searches for signs of life, finding Suzuko still breathing but unconscious. Hayashi Miki stands over her. The monster looms nearby, hungry and ready to feed on the fallen captive. Kyo intervenes to stop the creature, reminding Hayashi Miki that Suzuko is actually part of Luca's party. Hayashi Miki realizes that saving the girl is her best ticket to joining Luca's group without a fight. Kyo presses the multi-limbed entity to keep her identity a secret, asking for a temporary favor, and the creature wonders why she must stay hidden from the group. So Kyo bribes her with the promise of delicious food, convincing the entity to retreat and wait for the reward. While a dark seal pulses in the air and the system notes a sharp drop in the curse's influence, making Kyo realize that Suzuko staying hidden is the key to weakening the boss's hold. As Suzuko finally regains consciousness, where Kyo greets her with relief, lying to Suzuko about the monster running away to keep the situation under control, and Suzuko looks confused by the claim, brushing off the memory lapse with a wave of her hand. She insists they leave the dangerous area immediately. While Kyo celebrates the successful deception, and Suzuko introduces herself as Himajin while Hayashi Miki offers her own alias, as the two girls share a moment of connection, but the multilimbed entity lurking nearby senses a familiar, hungry presence, and the entity begins to follow Suzuko while its predatory instincts ignite at the sight of its target. Kyo tells Himajin not to get separated. Deep into the industrial sector, Luka demands a mission report from his team. But they have no intel on Hayashi Miki's current location, and Luka starts spiraling because he knows she is the only reason they are alive. So his men try to calm him down, yet Luka remains obsessed with Hayashi Miki's safety. Suddenly Himajin appears before them and she greets Luka directly. Then Luka expresses relief at her return. He welcomes her back to the fold, but he notices the strange kid standing right next to her. And the kid reveals that only he can see the shadowy entity clinging to Himajin. Himajin introduces the kid to Luka, and the group invites the newcomer into their party. Luka finds the kid's behavior deeply unsettling, so he activates his exclusive ability to read the kid's status. But the system flags the target with a massive warning. Luka reaches out to grab him, yet the system fails to pull any data at all, leaving him totally baffled. The system screen spams critical error messages in his face, so Luka tries to probe the kid's secrets with a cold, calculated grin, but the interface keeps crashing and glitching out, causing Luka to lose his balance and stumble hard to the floor. He grips his head as his own internal connection suffers a massive feedback surge. While the shadowy entity latches onto Kyo with a threatening warning, Luka recoils in physical agony from the sheer force of the rejection. And the rest of the team turns to see him collapsed on the ground. They ask what happened to make him drop like a stone. Kyo smirks and claims he just gave the boss a little scare. Then a sudden, deafening mechanical roar erupts from the facility. The entire structure detonates in a massive burst of light and debris, and the team stares in disbelief as the factory turns into a fireball. Panic sets in as the ground begins to tremor beneath them. Flames lick the sky while the trees themselves start uprooting and shifting. The kid warns them the monsters are moving, and Kyo senses the encroaching aura of the agitated beasts. Fire spreads rapidly across the surroundings. Himajin shouts for everyone to focus on her instructions immediately, and she orders the group to evacuate before the inferno consumes them. The group realizes rank 3 timber yokai are swarming their position. And a massive fire-wreathed monster emerges directly from the inferno. Luka wonders how the kid knows so much while questioning his own savior potential. His rivals mock him, claiming he is obsolete and already replaced. Meanwhile, a system notification confirms Luka's bonus for clearing the Black Forest boss is still climbing. He initiates a new item generation sequence during the player protection window, swearing he will reclaim his territory by making the intruders regret their arrival. Luka orders his remaining men to launch a desperate counterattack, but a sudden blast sends one of his lackeys flying across the battlefield. The explosion ripples through the area as the combat intensifies. Himajin realizes Luka is useless and signals for the team to retreat immediately. She grabs the panicked Luka to force him away from the front lines. Strange energy pulses as the timber yokai evolve despite the reduced curse levels. The forest surroundings erupt in further chaos from the evolving threats. Fire and debris rain down while the monsters close the distance. Himajin pulls him forward while urging him to move faster. Luka looks back at the encroaching danger while struggling to keep his footing. A twisted, corrupted figure lunges toward them with predatory intent. Claws reach out from the darkness to intercept their path, and the creature corners Luka, revealing its lethal, hunger-driven form. A massive fireball obliterates the creature before it can strike Luka. Himajin recognizes the familiar monster and jumps into the fray. Flames engulf the foe while it laughs in a twisted, manic state. The monster revels in the heat, proving its hunger is far from satisfied. Luka notes that Suzuko is still more concerned with food than his safety. He activates his job trait to attempt a high-stakes skill synchronization. The system confirms he can try to dominate bosses, but lesser monsters are too mindless to command. He considers targeting the Black Forest boss to see if it finally snaps the curse. Himajin urges him to escape while the monsters are preoccupied with the flames. Luka decides to gamble on finding and defeating the boss himself. He insists he knows exactly where the target is hiding. Himajin agrees to the plan before the timber yokai evolve beyond their control. She scoops him up and dashes through the ruins to reach the source. Thorny vines snake through the area, marking the boss's location. A voice echoes through the darkness, calling out for its daddy. The forest floor swarms with blooming flowers as the boss reveals its position. Luka realizes the scent of the flowers reveals the true mastermind, and rival opportunist watches from the shadows, eager to snipe the boss for himself. Energy surges through the ruins, catching the unsuspecting combatants off guard, and the rival draws his blade, ready to claim the kill and the glory. The dungeon difficulty spikes unexpectedly, leaving the surrounding group to panic at the sudden threat. Luka tries to keep his composure despite the overwhelming odds piling up against them. A system message confirms the subjugation bonus is underwhelming, forcing Luka to rethink his strategy. His companions question if they can even survive against a rank 3 timber yokai. Eyes narrowing, Luka realizes that standard tactics will not cut it in this hellscape. He lunges forward and brutally cuts down an NPC, deeming them nothing more than an eyesore. The system rewards the kill with extra XP and a rare job acquisition card. Bystanders watch in absolute horror as Luka stands over the fallen body. Realizing the boss bonus is too low, Luka decides that farming players is far more profitable. A sinister grin spreads across his face as he prepares to harvest points from everyone nearby. Mickey and her partner arrive on the scene, immediately sensing the heavy atmosphere. They survey the wreckage and realize the intensity of the recent battle. Spotting Luca, they witness his descent into madness and realize he has completely lost his mind. Mickey watches from a distance as Luca looms over the carnage he just created. She calls out to Luca, demanding to know exactly what he thinks he is doing. Luca turns to face her, brushing off the accusation with a cold, detached tone. Mickey snaps back, reminding him that they promised to clear this dungeon together without turning on allies. He counters by pointing out that the others were already corrupted by the scent of the flowers. Mickey struggles to process his twisted logic as the tension between them reaches a breaking point, and Luca explains that killing them was the only way to prevent them from becoming the boss's mindless thralls. Luca hands his bloodied blade to Mickey, insisting that she take his life to end this. Mickey refuses to accept this outcome, pleading for them to work together and clear the dungeon. She grabs his shirt, desperate to remind him of their shared goal as a beta tester. He ignores her pleas, cryptically stating that there is another way to resolve this. Leaning in close, Luca whispers that he is about to show her the truth. His expression twists into a manic glare as he reveals his true intent to kill her. A sudden, brutal strike pierces Mickey through the chest. Luca pins her to the ground with overwhelming force, mocking her as an NPC. He declares that he alone is the protagonist of this world. The sadistic player gloats about saving her life earlier just to farm her high-level role, leaving Mickey pinned and helpless. He prepares to finalize his twisted plan. Luca activates a system command to forcibly steal her job card while she still lives. Blue energy erupts around Mickey as the extraction process forcibly tears the power from her body. He catches the floating S-level job card, ecstatic over his newfound gain. A voice suddenly calls out to Mickey from the shadows. Luca turns his head, annoyed by the unexpected interruption. A newcomer nervously enters the scene, visibly shaken by the carnage he just stumbled upon. Luca welcomes the intruder with a sinister smile, eager to see what he brings to the table. The terrified player raises his hands in a defensive gesture, trying to laugh off the tension. Luca shuts him down instantly, bragging that he is a far better actor than any of them. The newcomer realizes Luca has shifted into a hostile predator, deciding it is time to bolt before he becomes the next victim. But Luca snaps his fingers and locks the space around him with a surge of will, leaving the newcomer trapped in a physical manifestation of forced authority. Luca mocks the guy for apparently ignoring the S-level ability he just snatched from Mickey, which confuses the newcomer since he had no idea Mickey even possessed such a power. The villain reveals that the dungeon's increased difficulty is entirely the newcomer's fault, accusing the newcomer of being a time slipper who sacrifices himself for others, labeling these selfless players as unpredictable calamities that ruin his perfect plans. Luca demands to know his true objective or the status of his clear bonus. Realizing that his survival depends on stalling until Suzuko arrives, the newcomer adopts a fake persona, claiming he is indeed the mastermind behind the chaos, causing Luca to drop his guard as he buys into the deception. He continues the bluff, insisting he sabotaged the dungeon to manipulate the bonus rewards, and Luca finds the confession genuinely amusing, so the newcomer decides to lean into the insanity to keep his enemy off balance, laughing manically while pretending his powers are warping the very air around them. Luca watches with interest, fully believing he has successfully intimidated a rival, but the newcomer suddenly summons a powerful aura, revealing his true nature as Himajin. And Luca, realizing he has been played, reacts with raw fury as the trap closes in. Luca strikes down the woman in front of him, while Himajin reflects on how even Hayashi Mickey failed to take him seriously, and a system notification confirms he has successfully acquired the level 5 Jurist job card, which he celebrates as the true source of his newfound power, gloating that stealing abilities from NPCs is far easier than waiting for a natural awakening. So he mockingly offers to cooperate with the infuriated Luca, who stares in total disbelief at the sudden surge of energy radiating from Himajin. Then Luca shouts in panic as waves of monsters swarm the area, and the two men scramble to evade the incoming tide of beasts. But Himajin just laughs off the suggestion of a partnership while the creatures close in, reveling in the chaos as his aura flares up to dominate the battlefield. Before Luca rejects the offer with a desperate, frantic counterattack, declaring that he would never submit to working under a monster like Himajin. Then a massive impact shatters the ground beneath them, and Luca cries out in terror as the monsters finally reach him. While he screams at Himajin to stop the assault, but Suzuko appears from the shadows, her eyes glowing red as she pins Luca down, and she reveals her terrifying intent by claiming she has come to find her daddy, which leaves Luca reeling in confusion as the realization of his situation hits him. Then Himajin just flashes a carefree grin and gives a thumbs up, confirming he is the one she is after. Luca finally snaps and begs for a deal, desperate to survive the assault, but Suzuko ignores him entirely to focus on her obsession with Himajin, and she asks for a nap while Himajin humors her with a calm, eerie smile, ordering her to wipe out the remaining monsters swarming the area. She tears into the horde with terrifying ease, clearing a path for them to escape. Then Himajin rushes to check on Hayashi Mickey, who is still recovering from her injuries. She lets out a pained sound as she finally begins to stir back to consciousness, and Himajin watches her with genuine concern, worried about her fragile state before he realizes the danger is not over as Suzuko drifts closer to him. She looms over him, demanding his attention with her singular focus on being his daddy. His hand brushes against her as he tries to maintain some semblance of control. Then she pulls him into a suffocating embrace, insisting they stay together for protection. He tries to reason with her, but the situation is rapidly spiraling out of his hands, noticing that the monsters nearby have suddenly stopped their pursuit and gone dormant, and even his own curse seems to have vanished in her strange, overwhelming presence. Realizing the boss of the Black Forest is actually behind this bizarre connection, a system prompt triggers an ability synchronization. Pulling power from the rank C Whisper Flower, she lashes out with powerful vine-like appendages to snatch him up. He struggles to break free, knowing he cannot escape her grasp now, and the boss monster declares him her next prey while he realizes he has been targeted. The Whisper Flower claims all the plants as her sensory network. And Himajin realizes the toxic fragrance he inhaled is actually binding him to her. Trapped by these vines, he acknowledges that escape is currently impossible, while the monster mocks his attachment to Suzuko, finding her beauty and strength amusing. She admits to being picky about her prey, savoring the idea of consuming him, leading Himajin to the bitter realization that Suzuko was her target all along. The beast explains she devoured Suzuko's eye to gain intelligence and must continue evolving to please her creator, but Himajin bristles at the mention of a human creator, drawing the monster's instant ire. A massive godlike entity appears in the vision, radiating pure monstrous energy, and the Whisper Flower calls Himajin a pathetic imposter for merely keeping a monster as a pet. Mocking his role as a keeper, she points out his hypocrisy. Noting that Suzuko calls him daddy despite the power he granted her, she finds the idea of him mimicking a true monster creator laughable, so Himajin counters that his purpose was specifically designed for managing these creatures. A dark, cold confidence settles in his eyes as he challenges her assumption, and the boss monster, impressed by his wit, offers to spare his life if he submits, laughing at the perceived audacity of her own generous proposal. Himajin flips her off, making it crystal clear he refuses to play by her rules, which only serves to amuse the monster further as her tongue snakes out in anticipation, and she prepares to force the issue, declaring he has absolutely no say in his fate. The ghost transformation ability is failing him, and the system clock warns he only has 10 minutes left to survive. Panicking, Himajin realizes he needs to wake Suzuko up before he runs out of time. But the Whisper Flower commands her minions to seize him immediately. Swarmed by monsters, Himajin dodges through the closing ranks, growling in frustration as his options dwindle. Desperate for a way out, he scans his surroundings for anything useful, suddenly spotting a job card that once belonged to Hayashi Miki. Betting everything on the hope that he can replicate her technique, he reaches out to grab the card. Yet the system rejects the activation, labeling the player unavailable for this specific job. His ghost transformation timer finally hits 0, leaving him vulnerable as the shadows close in, forcing him to trigger his Eye of Truth synchronization. The system initiates the process, causing his eye to flare with a dangerous red light, but the Whisper Flower notices the shift and moves to block him, refusing to let him rely on Suzuko's power. A massive surge of backlash hits Himajin, and the system chain snaps shut, forcibly aborting the synchronization process. Collapsing under the strain, he finds himself helpless against the encroaching monsters, while the Whisper Flower looms over him, promising to trap his consciousness in a nightmare forever. The monster's true form is finally revealed, and Himajin stares in horror at the reality of her power. The Whisper Flower claims his body as the system warns of deep world spiritual corruption, which makes him realize this place is way beyond a standard dungeon. And as his mind fractures, he recalls how Suzuko was the one who killed him in his past life, suddenly leaving him suspended in a strange, silent void where he realizes he is still alive and his eyes have undergone a bizarre shift. So he checks his system screen to find he is still logged into the dungeon interface. Then he hears a strange noise coming from behind a mysterious door, which he reaches out to open. And he finds a room filled with scattered papers and a figure shrouded in blur, realizing he is watching a projected memory of some kind, while a voice from the recording calls for a new existence to join its will, and Himajin recognizes the familiar signs of spiritual corruption being forced upon the subject, as the voice commands its masterpiece to emerge from the whirlwind of documents, while a mysterious figure in a lab coat grins, waiting for the manifestation to complete. And a young girl finally appears amidst the paper, looking completely lost, as the man in the lab coat declares her name is Suzuko, and she slowly processes the name he has given her while he reaches out to take her hand, and he creepily demands that she start calling him daddy, as the girl obediently accepts the new title, revealing the dark origin of her trauma. Himajin recoils as the vision of Suzuko shifts into a monstrous, hunger-driven entity. The lab coat figure continues to manipulate her, forcing a handshake that anchors her dependence. Reality pixels fracture as Himajin observes the stark contrast between the young girl and her later self. The scientist hails Suzuko as his grand opus, prepping her for a mission she barely understands. She accepts the praise blindly, unaware of the sinister purpose behind the validation. He promises her a role in saving the world, effectively turning her into a weapon. The projection suddenly dissolves into digital static, leaving Himajin grasping at thin air, kneeling amidst the scattered memory fragments. He realizes the entire display was a calculated breadcrumb trail. His own eyes flare with a dangerous intensity as he pieces together the true intent. A door materializes in the void, acting as a transparent lure he knows he should not follow. Yet the memory loop restarts, projecting a voice that echoes with Suzuko's forced devotion. The scientist unveils his latest research to her, claiming it possesses the power to transform all things. A strange, isolated flower appears on screen, identified as the Whisper Flower. Himajin recognizes the plant as the boss of the Black Forest. Though its form here seems off, the scientist critiques his creation, noting that unlike his perfect Suzuko, this specimen remains incomplete. He muses over the failure with a cold, detached curiosity. Suzuko lunges forward to embrace him, desperate to prove her utility and secure his approval. She offers herself entirely to his cause, craving a sense of purpose within his twisted design. The scientist accepts her offer with a sinister smile, explicitly demanding that she surrender her power, realizing her only value is compliance. Suzuko pledges to do whatever he requires to remain his daughter. The scientist demands a sacrifice from Suzuko. Targeting her eye as the necessary component for his twisted experiment, Himajin feels a sudden, sharp physical connection to the memory. Suzuko eagerly complies with his sick request. A brutal extraction occurs, leaving her mutilated. The agony rips through Himajin as he shares in her trauma. She hands over the ocular graft, desperate for his validation, begging for confirmation that she is still a good girl. Himajin collapses under the weight of this forced spiritual feedback. The scientist praises her sacrifice while she revels in his twisted affection. Himajin struggles to process the cruelty of the scene unfolding before him. The experimenter holds the stolen eye, preparing to merge it with his creation. He drops the biological material into the waiting whisper flower. The plant absorbs the organ, twisting into a grotesque new form. Himajin finally snaps, screaming at the digital projection of the scientist. His rage boils over at the sight of a child being used as a lab rat. He lashes out with a surge of power, attempting to break the simulation. The projection flickers, leaving Himajin alone in the now quiet void. He remains haunted by the visceral connection to Suzuko's suffering. Two doors appear in the distance, offering Himajin a path out of this nightmare. The two exit doors begin to multiply and shift, leaving Himajin questioning his own reality as the doors move on their own. These portals swing wide, dragging him back into a hellish playback of Suzuko's fate, where the scientist systematically harvests her limbs and memories for the whisper flower. Witnessing this cruelty triggers a psychotic break in Himajin. Realizing Suzuko is nothing more than fodder for a monster, he watches her hollow shell beg for her father. The projection of the broken girl crawls toward him, seeking comfort in her final moments. She mistakes Himajin for her tormentor, calling out for a father who destroyed her. Desperation radiates from her as she asks if he finally came to see her. The scientist enters with a pack of mutated beasts, forcing them upon the suffering girl. These creatures swarm Suzuko, their jagged forms threatening to consume what remains of her. She cries out in confusion, asking if these monsters are intended as her new playmates. The scientist discards Suzuko as a failed project, letting the beasts tear into her flesh. Her screams of agony echo through the simulation while she begs not to be abandoned. Himajin laughs at the sheer absurdity of the tragedy, mocking the fake father figure, telling the memory that both he and the scientist are just frauds in this twisted game. His synchronization rate with the Eye of Truth spikes to 50%. Power floods into Himajin, distorting his vision as he claims the role of her true savior. He lunges at the grotesque whisper flower, taunting the creature for its repulsive appearance. The monstrosity reveals its jagged maw, ready to swallow him whole in the dark. Whisper Flower lashes out with her vines, promising to drag Himajin straight to hell. Mocking laughter erupts from Himajin as he encourages the monster to keep pushing. The creature's aura flares with malicious intent while she questions how long he can keep up the act. Pain tears through Himajin's body, yet he brushes it off as nothing compared to Suzuko's suffering. His synchronization with the Eye of Truth begins to spiral rapidly. System alerts warn of severe spiritual corruption, but Himajin embraces the transformation, declaring that if the beasts want to feast on Suzuko, he will turn the tables and consume them instead. A manic grin spreads across his face as he challenges the twisted logic of this memory. He launches himself into the swarm of creatures, crushing the ground beneath his feet with raw force. Grabbing a beast by the head, Himajin revels in the chaos of the slaughter, demanding a taste of the monsters. He tears into them with a hunger that defies human limits. Surrounded by the writhing pack, he continues to carve his way through their ranks. Spitting out the vile essence of the creatures, he scoffs at the sickening flavor. His synchronization rate hits a dangerous 70%, pushing his physical form to the brink. Ignoring the warnings, Himajin hungers for more, desperate to devour every last beast. Whisper Flower observes his descent into madness and offers him a final resting place, inviting him to enter her memory to meet his end. She prepares to finish the job. Ignoring the threat, Himajin reaches Suzuko and pulls her into a protective embrace. She looks up in confusion, asking if he is her father while the warmth of his presence surrounds her. He promises to be exactly who she needs him to be, finally claiming the role of her daddy. The monster mocks him, claiming this reality is just a construct of her own will, declaring that even if he manages to consume her, his death is already guaranteed. She warns him that a human body cannot survive the toxic influence of a monster's willpower. His synchronization rate spikes to 90% as he rejects her reality, insisting he is Suzuko's protector. The creature recoils in horror. Unable to comprehend the madness radiating from his twisted form, brushing off her fear, he suggests she go back to sleep just like she did before. She wonders why he is releasing his hold on her, clearly baffled by his erratic behavior. Taunting her to hurry up, he asks if she plans on using her full power or not. The boss creature snarls at his arrogance, her patience wearing thin as his defiance grows. He vows to tear her apart repeatedly, determined to avenge the pain she caused his new daughter. Silence descends as he crushes her resistance, fulfilling the conditions to overcome the level C boss. A surge of overwhelming pressure slams into her, pinning the creature in place. Struggling to move, she gasps in disbelief at the sheer weight of his newfound strength. He absorbs her force of will, noting with a grin how much stronger it makes him. Signaling the final phase, he prepares to toy with her like a common plaything. The boss turns her gaze towards Suzuko, hoping to use the girl as a last resort. Suzuko intervenes with terrifying intensity, demanding to know who dared to harm her daddy. He playfully encourages Suzuko to unleash her hunger on the boss, offering her a meal. Suzuko corners the terrified monster, interrogating her about the injuries inflicted upon her father. The creature desperately blames him for his own wounds, but Suzuko refuses to believe her lies. Suzuko does not buy the boss creature's desperate excuses for a second. Silencing her with a brutal strike, Himejin shifts his focus back to Hayashi Miki, who is finally stirring and checking her own status. Hayashi Miki stares at Himejin in total confusion, wondering just how he became this powerful so suddenly. The guy just laughs it off, brushing aside her concern with a comment about being a doting father. He drives the blade straight into her side to stabilize her, warning her that it is going to sting. Blood sprays as the steel pierces her, and the sudden influx of energy makes her eyes glow. She reacts violently to the pain, grabbing Himejin by the throat in a panicked, reflexive outburst. Accusing him of conspiring with that madman, her eyes burning with suspicion and lingering trauma, she raises her sword to finish him off. While he desperately pleads that Luca was the one pulling the strings, reminding her that he just saved her life by stopping the bleeding, he waits for her to realize the truth. Hayashi Miki notices her wounds are actually closing, so she finally lowers the blade and backs off. Meanwhile, Suzuko continues to feast on the boss creature, completely ignoring the drama unfolding nearby. Majin double-checks that Hayashi Miki is truly alright and free from any lasting corruption. She admits she feels surprisingly fine, her earlier confusion giving way to strange, newfound clarity. He drops the bombshell that Luca swiped her job card, meaning her powers have been completely stripped. Hayashi Miki panics at the realization, leaning in close to Himejin as the weight of the loss hits her. He offers a risky solution, asking her to lend him her remaining strength if she wants to get it back. Trusting him without hesitation, she agrees to whatever plan he has in store. Her quick compliance catches him off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless at her absolute faith in him. He watches her with a calculating grin, wondering internally if she's just pure-hearted or incredibly naive. Himejin calls out to Suzuko, who turns away from her meal to acknowledge him. An overwhelming aura suddenly floods the area, forcing the bystanders to brace for the impact. The girl nearby is visibly confused, wondering if Himejin is actually a father figure to this creature. Himejin ignores the comment, instead asking Suzuko to stop eating the woman she captured. He promises the monster a much tastier reward if she lets the victim go right now. Suzuko eagerly agrees to the deal, her eyes glowing with anticipation for the new treat. Quick to act, Himejin reaches out to cover the girl's eyes so she does not see the gruesome process. Suzuko pries her own mouth open, revealing the lady she had been consuming moments ago, spitting the captive out. She receives a quick pat of approval from Himejin for her compliance. The released woman hits the ground, gasping for air as she struggles to regain her senses. Himejin turns his attention back to the creature, demanding that Suzuko finish the job. He commands her to completely obliterate the woman while he watches with a cold, sharp intensity. The monster shrieks in defiance, warning Himejin not to underestimate her true power. Ghostly green figures swarm into the battlefield, summoned by the creature to defend her position. These spirits tower over the group, their frames crackling with hostile energy. Everyone scrambles to react as the army of apparitions closes in on their location. The captive woman realizes the danger is far from over, noting the sheer number of enemies. Suzuko asks if she should devour these new arrivals, but Himejin decides to handle things differently. He checks if the monster is finished with the previous task, ignoring her taunts about his power. The creature vows to drag Himejin down with her as she prepares for the final clash. Himejin calls the creature's bluff, daring her to do her absolute best to survive. He gathers a concentrated burst of energy in his palm, his smile sharpening into something manic. The surrounding spirits suddenly freeze in place as his power ripples through the air. Every spectral entity stops its advance, caught in the sudden lockdown of his technique. Hayashi Miki notices the standstill, her eyes widening as she realizes the threat has been neutralized. She approaches Himejin to question his methods, but stops short when she catches sight of his altered appearance. The change in his face is impossible to ignore, leaving Hayashi Miki visibly rattled by the sight. He explains that this is the result of spiritual corruption, a high-tier dungeon phenomenon that he has clearly tapped into. Reaching out, he grips Hayashi Miki's hand, his expression softening to reassure her of his control. She looks at him with genuine concern, still reeling from the sudden shift in his demeanor. He waves off her worry with a lighthearted comment, treating the situation like a casual sibling interaction. Their playful banter masks the reality of his condition, even as he claims his mental age is higher. Meanwhile, the creature struggles against the restraints, begging for a release that is not coming yet. He breaks down the dungeon mechanics for her, noting that the Black Forest has shifted from exploration to a mission-based objective. The difficulty spike from F to C is entirely due to Luca, a truth he keeps carefully tucked away. He pivots to the mission objective, explaining that defeating the boss is the only way to secure the needed reward. Back in the fray, the creature continues to writhe. Still trapped in the lockdown Himejin imposed, he emphasizes that a level C boss will drop the specific item Hayashi Miki needs to progress. She accepts the goal with a renewed confidence, trusting him to guide her through the encounter. Handing the responsibility over, she draws her blade and prepares to finish the boss once and for all. Hayashi Miki charges the boss to rescue Suzuko, who watches the confrontation with a twisted grin, swinging her blade with lethal precision. Hayashi Miki cuts the creature down in a single, fluid motion. The dungeon interface flashes to signal the boss is dead, and the mission is officially cleared because Hayashi Miki lacks a player job. The system glitches and forces Amic Leo to take the credit instead. Realizing the system credited him, Amic Leo acknowledges the victory while the spirit watches him closely. He immediately asks Hayashi Miki to keep his identity a secret, leaving her confused about his true motives. The system prompts him to set a player ID, and he decides to enter a new name. Selecting the tag keeper, he officially secures his new identity within the system. A bonus calculation begins, and the system prepares to grant the spirit her long-awaited wish. Suddenly, Hayashi Miki collapses in pain, her body failing her right as the rewards are distributed. Amic Leo retrieves the boss's sprite-type monster core, unaware of the immediate danger Hayashi Miki is in. Hayashi Miki questions how to use the core, desperate to understand if it holds the key to her survival. Joking that she should not eat it, Amic Leo tries to lighten the mood while she struggles to breathe. She coughs up blood as her condition rapidly deteriorates. Shocking Amic Leo, who rushes to her side, the spirit asks if she can consume the dying girl, but Amic Leo sternly forbids it, paralyzed and losing feeling in her limbs. Hayashi Miki fears the end is finally upon her, desperate to save her. Amic Leo tries to keep her calm while assessing the critical damage. He channels his energy into the monster core, hoping to stabilize her failing vital signs. Instructed to consume the core, Hayashi Miki forces herself to take the item despite her agony. She swallows the core, and they both wait to see if it can reverse the lethal corruption. The monster core begins to take effect, and Hayashi Miki is bathed in a surging wave of elemental energy. Gold-tier cores are notoriously rare and carry a market value of over 2 million credits. Amic Leo realizes that stripping away the bosses will allow him to harness pure elemental power. Hayashi Miki undergoes a terrifying transformation as the energy consumes her, leaving Amic Leo to wonder if she is actually being puppeteered. The elemental force is clearly overriding her consciousness. A violent shockwave erupts, and Amic Leo is sent reeling by the sheer force of the release. Suzuko emerges from the chaos, her predatory instincts fully awakened and her eyes glowing with a lethal hunger. She immediately begs for permission to feed on Hayashi Miki, forcing Amic Leo to remind her of their agreement. The spirit brushes off his concern, clearly finding his protective nature toward the human amusing. Amic Leo notices a drastic shift in her aura and realizes that one wrong word could make him her next meal. He attempts to de-escalate by asking for her protection, hoping to keep her focus from straying toward the vulnerable girl. Hayashi Miki remains unresponsive while floating in the energy currents, and Amic Leo weighs the risk of asking Suzuko for help. He ultimately decides that engaging the spirit is far too dangerous. His own power is failing to bridge the distance, and the energy field is becoming impossible to penetrate. Hayashi Miki is fading fast as her body reaches its absolute physical limit. Amic Leo notices the side effects of the core beginning to corrupt his own hands. Leaving him no choice but to rely on Suzuko, he calls out to her, begging for assistance in reaching the dying girl. Suzuko asks for instructions, and Amic Leo commands her to throw him directly into the energy storm. She grabs him with a massive, ghostly hand. Amic Leo pleads for her to be gentle as they are launched toward Hayashi Miki. Suzuko lets out a sadistic cackle as she flings Amic Leo deep into the heart of the storm, propelled by her massive spiritual strength. He hurtles through the air toward the swirling core. The energy field erupts upon contact, and a massive shockwave clears the mist as he crashes into the center of the chaos. Amic Leo scrambles to find Hayashi Miki amidst the clearing debris, finding her finally coming to as he shakes her awake. She gasps in confusion, still reeling from the near-lethal exposure to the core, and Amic Leo sighs in relief, telling her she was moments away from turning into a plant. Hayashi Miki realizes the severity of her state as she scans her own body. She covers herself in a panic, but Amic Leo quickly turns away to give her privacy. Hayashi Miki notices the signs of spiritual corruption on his hand and questions if he is all right. Suzuko looms over them with a menacing threat, causing Hayashi Miki to shriek in genuine fear. Amic Leo steps between them, reminding Suzuko that she needs to respect his allies. She begrudgingly backs off, and Amic Leo calls out for her to produce the job card. Hayashi Miki stares at the card in her hand, having finally regained the ability to use it. He urges Suzuko to move on, leaving Hayashi Miki alone as the spirit retreats into the shadows. She calls out to him, desperate to know if his name is truly Himajin. He ignores the question, choosing to walk away with the terrifying spirit instead. Hayashi Miki watches him go, deeply unsettled by his willingness to accept such horrific corruption. Amic Leo wonders to himself if he is still human or if the darkness has finally claimed him. A monstrous entity looms over Hayashi Miki, demanding she choose her next words carefully. The spirit suddenly calls out that her father is nearby, leaving Hayashi Miki completely bewildered. Amic Leo makes his exit, casually asking her to be gentle when they cross paths again. Hayashi Miki finally confirms his name is Amic Leo, a grin slowly spreading across her face. The Black Forest dungeon clears with a massive system broadcast, hitting a record speed of under 24 minutes. Observers at the association scramble in disbelief as the data logs update in real time. The staff struggles to process the rapid clear. Confirming the dungeon is officially off the board, global rankings shift instantly, crowning a mysterious player named Keeper as the undisputed top clearer. 10 hours pass, and the ruins of the forest remain completely abandoned by the living. A squad from the Apparition Association arrives at the subway garage, only to realize they missed the action. A hand reaches down to inspect the mangled remains scattered across the floor. The Monster 2 head notes the surgical precision of the kill, surprised by the lack of struggle. Another creature chimes in about the brutality, noting the lingering warmth still radiating from the body. Bone Ren snaps at his companion to stay quiet, trying to process the tactical flaw left behind. They identify the missing core and the precise chest wound, realizing the killer knows exactly how to finish a monster. The group mourns their fallen comrade, but Bone Ren warns them to keep their heads in the game. Felmina appears and demands to know the identity of the slayer who took out their leader. She orders Chell to retrieve the final visual records before the target expired. Chell immediately initiates the playback, projecting the stored memory into the air for the others. A red beam of light bursts from the eye of the projector, revealing the face of the one who did it. Raw energy rips through the projection, swallowing the view in a storm of red lightning. The footage clears to reveal a man trapped in shifting vines, calling out for someone to hurry. His face contorts with multiple glowing eyes as he declares himself the god of monsters. Monsters watching the playback shriek in horror at the sight of the carnage. Disbelief ripples through the group when they hear a human child was responsible for the kill. One beast rages at the insult, swearing vengeance against the mysterious killer. A massive female entity demands to know who harmed her father. She recognizes the figure in the memory as the infamous Queen of Destruction. Realization dawns on the monsters that the human keeper ranks even higher than the queen. They conclude that the elusive leader they have been hunting is actually Keeper himself. The Queen of Destruction descends into manic laughter at the discovery of a superior being. Her subordinates scramble to react to the sheer power radiating from the memory. She regains her composure and decides they must track down this incarnation of the Great One. Turning to her follower doll, she orders her to approach the human and discern his true motives. The woman steps forward, gracefully accepting the dangerous mission to infiltrate the human side. Doll prepares to make contact, her expression hiding whatever schemes she has in store across the city. The Jason City Job Holder Cooperative hums with activity. Agents scramble to analyze the unprecedented 24-hour dungeon clear time. Speculation runs wild among the staff about whether the mysterious Keeper is a beta tester. Chell monitors the situation from the sidelines, finding the whole Keeper identity deeply suspicious. Hayashi Miki is approached by Jenna, an operative from the cooperative. Jenna cuts straight to the point with questions about the recent Black Forest incident. Mickey remains on guard as Jenna presses for details about the mysterious player known as Keeper. Knowing the attention is inevitable, Mickey keeps her cool while internalizing the weight of the secret. She recalls Keeper's foresight, including his decision to hide Amic Leo and conceal Suzuko's existence. Meanwhile, Amic Leo seeks refuge in an abandoned hotel to reassess his current standing. Status screens confirm his profession is still stuck at level F. With spiritual corruption rising, reaching for a clear bonus, he pulls out a rare mimic crystal. This level C unique item catches him off guard, watching it transform. He tests the item's capabilities directly. Realization hits that this unique equipment is unlike anything he has encountered before. He shifts his focus to the Impure Eye, an item tethered to the memories of Suzuko. The presence of Suzuko looms in his mind as he examines the cursed object. A smile creeps across his face, masking his true intentions as he prepares to use it. Summoning his strength, he channels his energy to initiate the connection. The link between them solidifies, bringing Suzuko back into his immediate reach. Eyes glowing with intense power, she reacts to the surge of energy. The chaotic force floods the room, leaving him reeling from the raw intensity. Amic Leo struggles to stay grounded against the overwhelming pressure radiating from the entity. Clarity strikes him as he realizes that the father figure in these memories is not actually himself. Amic Leo questions if he's losing his connection to Suzuko, but the entity instantly lunges toward him from the shadows, clinging to him with an intensity that confirms his fears were entirely misplaced. And Amic Leo struggles to push her away while she remains fixated on him. He pulls up her status screen to see if the connection triggered an upgrade, finding that Suzuko has successfully evolved into a corrupted zombie. The sudden power surge hits Amic Leo with a wave of intense physical pain, forcing him to his knees as the corruption flares up uncontrollably. He wonders if his willpower is failing him since he previously held this energy in check. And Suzuko reacts with immediate distress as Amic Leo collapses before her. Her eyes burn with a crimson light while she tries to understand his sudden agony. Amic Leo is left gasping for air as the green energy continues to consume his arm. While Suzuko observes him in his weakened state, believing he is simply exhausted, the corruption pulses through his veins, signaling the severity of his injuries. She reaches out to comfort him, apologizing for her perceived failure to protect him. Promising that he will recover, her gaze remains fixed on his deteriorating condition. A memory surfaces of a doctor and a young girl searching for a hidden utopia, and Suzuko wonders aloud about the nature of this perfect world, listening as the man describes a place filled with hope and happiness, until the vision fades, leaving Amic Leo and Suzuko alone in the suffocating silence of the present. Amic Leo realizes his memories are finally aligning after the intense mental strain. Suzuko leans in with an eerie, possessive affection, insisting that he is her father. Consciousness returns to Amic Leo, forcing him to reckon with the time he lost. The lingering spiritual corruption flares up, sending a jolt of agony through his body. Suzuko's manifestation spirals into a terrifying swarm of faces, each one echoing a distorted laughter. Amic Leo stares back in genuine shock at the monstrosity she has become. She hovers above him with unnatural grace, completely oblivious to the terror she radiates. Checking his hand, Amic Leo finds the corruption spreading along with unsettling hallucinations. He forces himself into a meditative stance to suppress the volatile energy, channeling his sheer willpower. He pushes the green aura back into the depths of his being, finding success in the technique. He manages to stabilize the corruption for the moment. Suzuko drops the act and clings to him with a sudden, needy intensity. She demands food with a predatory grin that does not quite reach her eyes. Amic Leo probes her for any remnants of the monster group they previously consumed. Questioning her sudden shift back to childlike form, he wonders if her power growth is the cause. Concluding that her regression is linked to her perception of him, he accepts the change. Suzuko reveals her stomach, displaying the glowing remnants of the monsters she devoured. She admits to gorging herself, leaving Amic Leo both impressed and slightly concerned. Noticing that her process turns monster remains into high-value crystals, he recognizes a new tactical advantage, promising her a better meal. Amic Leo takes the crystals and prepares to move on. Amic Leo and Suzuko arrive at the Getsuren City hub, finding the cooperative already bustling with activity. Avoiding official channels to stay under the radar, they decide to test their luck at the black market. Although the dungeons only surfaced a week ago, the underground trade is already thriving with shady operators. A man named Tokura Kuro catches Amic Leo's attention, recognized as a future tyrant who will eventually monopolize the city's low-level dungeons. Approaching the man, Amic Leo attempts to sell his salvaged monster resources while claiming authority in the city. Tokura Kuro casts a suspicious glance at the newcomer, clearly unimpressed by the pitch. Dismissing the duo immediately, Tokura Kuro warns them to clear out and stay away from his turf. Refusing to leave, Amic Leo urges the man to reconsider and inspect the goods before passing judgment, revealing a high-purity crystal. Amic Leo watches as Tokura Kuro realizes the item is far from ordinary. Pointing out that he does not handle unknown goods, the merchant still hesitates to turn them away. Tokura Kuro activates his interface to run a scan on the mysterious green stone. Seeing the system verify a 20% purity rate from the Black Forest, Tokura Kuro realizes the value is immense. Brushing off questions about the origin, Amic Leo demands a fair trade or he will take his business elsewhere, changing his tune instantly. Tokura Kuro offers to buy the entire lot and introduces himself with a greedy grin, negotiating a final price of 100,000. Amic Leo secures a deal worth 10 times the official exchange rate. Satisfied with the payday, Amic Leo promises Suzuko a proper meal to satisfy her persistent, supernatural hunger. Reflecting on how close he was to poverty just days ago, Amic Leo marks this as a turning point, sensing movement behind them. Suzuko suddenly warns Amic Leo that they are being followed by hostile figures. Turning around, Amic Leo confirms that the thugs they dealt with earlier have returned to collect. Back in his office, Tokura Kuro stares at the crystal and ponders the identity of the mysterious brat who just changed his market. Back in the shadows, the lead thug orders his men to track down the mysterious speed player. Watching through a remote interface, Tokura Kuro commands his associates to keep a close watch on Amic Leo. Sensing the encroaching group, Suzuko asks if they have finally come for her, dismissing her bloodlust. Amic Leo warns Suzuko that he is the actual target of their pursuit. The group of thugs charges forward, shouting for the others to capture Amic Leo. Realizing the situation has turned hostile, Amic Leo grabs Suzuko and initiates a desperate sprint. Enjoying the chase, Suzuko floats alongside him while laughing at the thrill of the hunt. The pursuers close the gap, taunting the pair for trying to outrun them. Checking the surroundings, Amic Leo decides to scale the building to escape the relentless crowd. Channeling his energy, he leaps upward to reach the rooftops. Suzuko helps propel Amic Leo into the air, leaving the thugs scrambling below. Seeing him defy gravity, the attackers realize they are dealing with a registered job holder. Observing the mundane nature of their weapons, Amic Leo wonders if these guys are connected to Tokura Kuro. Connecting the dots, he realizes they must have witnessed the massive crystal trade earlier. The thugs continue their pursuit, swearing at Amic Leo for mocking them. Turning back to move, Amic Leo signals for Suzuko to keep pace. Keeping their momentum, they dash across the narrow rooftops. Navigating the urban maze, Amic Leo manages to stay just out of reach. Questioning why he is drawing so much heat over simple crystals, Amic Leo scans the area for an exit. Greeting his pursuers with a defiant grin, he prepares to deal with the trouble head-on. The Black Owl Company agents corner Amic Leo and demand his total compliance, knowing they mean business. He wonders why these job holders are hunting him. Meanwhile, at Getsuren Plaza, a mysterious woman in a dress wanders through the crowd, searching for her missing friends with an unsettling grin. She projects a wave of dark energy that ripples across the entire square. Pedestrians freeze in their tracks as the ominous aura envelops them. Wandering among the terrified civilians, she asks if anyone has seen her friends. Tendrils of shadow sprout from her back, forming multiple grasping hands. The bystanders are paralyzed by her presence. Unable to look away from the display, since they cannot provide answers, she tells them to go find her missing friends instead. A female job holder nearby receives an urgent call and sprints toward the plaza, unaware of the danger. She rushes through the streets to reach the site, picking up the pace. She wonders why the situation feels so chaotic. She spots the crowd gathered around the mysterious woman near the center of the plaza, stopping in her tracks. She senses a gaze locked onto her from across the square. Realizing she is being watched, she stares back into the sea of people. The woman in the dress approaches, her presence radiating an unnatural beauty. Feeling intimidated, the job holder tries to greet the stranger with a nervous wave. The woman in the dress focuses her glowing eyes on the newcomer, vanishing in a blink. She leaves the job holder completely bewildered by the sudden disappearance. The exhausted job holder decides to head back to headquarters, while the mysterious woman tracks a familiar scent that links the girl to the Black Forest. She rallies her thralls to approach the target, leaving the girl to wonder why she feels so drained. Elsewhere, a sundry seller claims he has no high-class goods to offer. But as he offers to reveal his supplier, his nervousness becomes impossible to ignore. An impatient thug decides to skip the talking and lunges at the seller with a violent strike. The seller narrowly dodges the blow, forcing the attackers to reconsider their approach. A shadow-like entity looms over the seller, but he tries to de-escalate the situation. The thugs remain aggressive, so he decides it is time to reveal his true colors. A terrifying spectral presence manifests behind him, marking a shift in the power dynamic. Sensing something abnormal, the thugs realize their usual intimidation tactics are failing. A man in sunglasses watches the display with an amused grin, encouraging the thugs to keep attacking. The thugs prepare to rush in again, unaware of the trap they are walking into, yet their next strike connects with nothing but thin air. The seller activates a mysterious surge of blue energy, and he asks the thugs if they have ever heard of the Black Forest's famous speed player. A system interface confirms his title as speed player, granting him a massive agility boost. The lead thug feels his hand recoil from a sudden, sharp backlash. Blue energy flares as the seller maneuvers with impossible speed, leaving the thugs scrambling as their target begins to levitate. The man in sunglasses sneers, taunting the group to find the speed keeper if they can. The speed player floats high above the ground, urging the thugs to pick up the pace. He demands information on the secret of clearing dungeons if they want to survive. His target stammers in confusion, questioning why anyone would hunt for such dangerous intel. The speed player brushes off the concern, mocking the amateurish way the man tries to coat his body in spiritual energy. Deciding he needs answers, the speed player declares he will just take the man along to get the truth himself. A massive spectral entity suddenly erupts behind the speed player, screeching about what he is doing to Daddy. This terrifying spirit identifies itself as Suzuko, looming over the battlefield with a predatory grin. She screams that he is a bad man, demanding he spill everything he knows about the dungeons. The speed player recoils in panic, desperate for the spirit to stop its assault. His levitation falters as the sheer pressure of the spirit forces him to drop, scrambling backward in disbelief. He tries to understand what kind of entity he just provoked. The thugs nearby notice his sudden vulnerability and prepare to capitalize on his distraction. One of the gang members recoils at the sight of the speed player's twisted expression. The spirit continues to wail for Daddy, insisting that she is perfectly fine. She admits that the encounter almost forced her to reveal Suzuko, but she remains tight-lipped about the other player, realizing he is out of options. The speed player drops his casual act and prepares for a real fight. The lead thug signals his crew to activate magic amplification, turning the brawl into a lethal confrontation. A manic grin spreads across the speed player's face as he realizes the thugs are finally going for the kill. Chaos erupts in the plaza as the empowered thugs charge forward to shred him to pieces. The speed player observes their coordinated strike, impressed by the wind-based speed boost they managed to pull off. The speed player ignores the thugs as a system alert warns him that his creature is starving. Realizing he has to feed Suzuko immediately, he shifts his focus away from the brawl. One thug closes the distance with surprising speed, catching the distracted player off guard. Forcing him to dodge a heavy strike, the speed player mutters in annoyance at the interruption. He decides to stop holding back and end the fight on his own terms. Green energy coalesces in his hand as he prepares to unleash a spiritual technique. Multiple thugs leap toward him, but he counters with a wide-range spiritual attack. Their bodies lock up instantly, leaving them unable to move or defend against his follow-up. The player feels the familiar drain of side effects and knows he must act fast to save Suzuko. Spotting a new target in the distance, he demands a monster item to resolve the crisis. The thug in sunglasses refuses to back down, claiming the fight is far from over. Activating a complex magic circle, the opponent prepares to unleash his own hidden power. Wind whips through the plaza as the player navigates the intense pressure. Seeing the thug is loaded with supplies, he orders Suzuko to assist in the robbery. She launches herself at the target, her spectral presence overwhelming the man's defenses. The thug tries to curse him out, but the spirit's assault leaves him no room to maneuver. Suzuko connects with a devastating strike, crushing the thug's resistance in an instant. With the enemy neutralized, the speed player moves in to claim the monster items. He gives the remaining survivors an ultimatum to hand over their goods or face death. The terrified thug crawls through the rubble and begs for his life, offering everything he has. The speed player inspects the stolen Rot-Eater arm, noting its high market value. He feeds the item to Suzuko, whose starvation levels begin to stabilize immediately. Observing the item vanish into thin air, the defeated thug realizes his own existence is just as fragile. Checking his smartphone, the speed player finds a bounty on his own head worth $6 million. Listening to the thugs confirm the offer, he jokes about turning himself in for the payout. Despite the temptation, he refuses to compromise his anonymity. Admitting he has no love for his rivals, the thug with sunglasses awkwardly laughs, terrified by the player's cold dismissal, blaming the speed player for his own ruined state. The thug realizes just how dangerous this guy really is. Teasing the man, the player offers to pass on some of his own cursed aesthetic. An urgent muster call for all job holders suddenly lights up the thug's screen. Noting the alarm, the speed player demands to know what is happening in Getsurin City. A massive red rift tears open the sky, signaling a major dungeon breakout. Curiosity piqued, the speed player decides to investigate the crisis firsthand. He invites the terrified thugs to tag along, leaving them no room to refuse. Sweating profusely, the thug forces a smile and agrees. Desperate to stay on the player's good side, lightning crackles around the expanding fissure as the city faces an unprecedented threat. Mayor Fujinami Satoru watches the skies, questioning if an immediate evacuation is necessary. Dismissing the panic, officials confirm the city has not reached a total collapse stage yet. Elite players begin gathering at the site, preparing to confront the encroaching dungeon. Arriving at the scene, the speed player eyes the rift, identifying it as a massive, high-stakes dungeon. The ghostly presence looming over Himajin-san suddenly mutters about family. Her razor-sharp teeth and glowing eyes reveal a hunger for kin. Realizing the entity is talking about Suzuko, Himajin-san freezes in place. She insists on the connection, claiming she can smell the girl's bloodline. Sensing a hidden agenda, Himajin-san decides to pivot his plans to investigate this discovery. A man named Akutsu approaches him, noting the rift feels wrong and contradicts official reports. Questioning why the dungeon is not radiating annihilation energy, Akutsu shares his confusion. Curious about the leak, Himajin-san asks if he should even be hearing the sensitive intel. Akutsu dismisses the concern, framing the disclosure as an apology for his organization's past rudeness. Explaining the history, Akutsu links this event to a past catastrophe in Naru City. He points out that the timing of this dungeon's appearance feels suspiciously engineered. Officially introducing himself, Akutsu admits the Black Owl Company is practically a mystery box. Gesturing toward the crowd, he highlights the high-profile job holders the company is currently sponsoring. A red-haired woman named Ryua steps into view, identified as a high-level dragon handler. Her cheerful demeanor stands in stark contrast to the brewing chaos of the rift. Akutsu laughs, boasting about how many powerful assets his company has already secured. Himajin-san recognizes Ryua as a top-tier threat. Noting her star status and immense potential, sensing an opportunity, Akutsu invites Himajin-san to jump on their investment bandwagon. Keeping his options open, Himajin-san agrees to consider the deal while staying focused on Suzuko, reaching out toward the rift. He prepares for whatever monstrosity is about to emerge. A guy named Anai-gen suddenly corners Himajin-san, treating him like some random recruit. Boasting about his level 7 Perceptor ability and his Team Gendo command, he tries to recruit him. Himajin-san is clearly weirded out by the guy's invasive approach. Akutsu steps in to intervene, but Anai-gen is far too busy trying to get a rise out of his target. Despite his flashy title of Fallen Emissary, Himajin-san just sees a total creep. Anai-gen keeps pushing his luck with more bizarre comments. The captain of their group finally arrives on the scene, clearly fed up with the display. Anai-gen feigns innocence, acting like he has no clue why everyone is so annoyed. The captain can barely handle the sheer level of nonsense coming from her own teammate. She snaps, warning him to drop the creepy act before she loses her temper for real. Anai-gen thrives on the hostility, which only makes the captain even more irritated. She apologizes to the others for his behavior, admitting he's a massive headache to deal with. The captain demands to know why he's even trying to recruit Himajin-san. He doubles down, claiming he senses some kind of hidden potential in the kid. A massive, terrifying energy suddenly flares up behind them. The captain stares in disbelief at the raw power manifesting right in front of her. Akutsu warns Himajin-san to back away from Anai-gen immediately. Suzuko's spirit suddenly appears, desperate and hunting for someone. Her phantom form looms large with a terrifying, hungry grin, and Himajin-san realizes she has finally tracked them down, just as Anai-gen continues to make things worse. The confusion deepens as the identity of the mysterious figure remains just out of reach. But then a familiar silhouette catches the eye, sparking immediate recognition. It is Hayashi Miki, standing right there in the middle of the crowd. And realizing she is currently in Getsurin City, there is an urgent need to stay out of her sight. Yet a spectral presence begins to manifest. Clinging to a form only some can perceive, a woman in an elegant Victorian dress appears, clutching an umbrella as if she owns the street. Himajin-san is thrown for a loop when the spirit points, claiming she has found her father. Scanning the area reveals nothing out of the ordinary, leaving everyone else completely baffled. But the woman's eyes glow with a predatory violet light as she locks onto her target. A command is issued to move out, and the spirit drags the group along with her. Akutsu pivots back to the mission, demanding details on the upcoming dungeon advent. The mayor of Getsurin City appears on a massive screen, breaking the tension with an emergency announcement. He warns of an incomplete level C dungeon manifesting in the heart of the city. Prevent a disaster, the city is offering generous rewards and training slots to any teams willing to intervene. Despite the hype, Himajin-san remains unimpressed. Dismissing the level C threat as a total breeze, nearby players start posturing, eager to prove their worth as true professionals in this high-stakes game. The mayor continues his broadcast, his face shifting into a calculated, almost sinister grin, challenging the city's hunters to step up and handle the catastrophe. And the reality of the situation hits as the world warps into the fairytale kingdom. The team snaps into high gear, drawing weapons and scanning for threats as the dungeon descent begins. Himajin-san begins a spiritual survey of the area, noting that the immediate vicinity seems secure, yet he remains fixated on Suzuko, whose erratic and aggressive behavior since their arrival signals a deeper threat. A sudden projectile streaks through the air, closing in with lethal speed. Impacting a nearby player with enough force to cause an immediate, explosive casualty, panic ripples through the remaining team as they realize they are being targeted by an unseen assailant. Himajin-san immediately activates his combat mode, manifesting a complex magic circle to anchor their defense. Incoming fire forces him to pivot, dodging another deadly strike while he holds his ground. His glasses shatter under the intense pressure of the spirit's assault. Forcing him to channel raw energy to repel the continued barrage of attacks, he manages to shove a teammate to safety. Though the sheer force of the impact leaves them both reeling, warning the others that standard combat tactics are useless against a creature of at least level D intensity, the shadow of the attacker looms closer, cutting through the battlefield like a phantom. A figure known as the homecoming hunter emerges from the gloom, claiming he has finally located his prey. Himajin-san realizes his initial assessment was dangerously low. As this opponent clearly exceeds the expected threat level, The hunter eyes his targets with predatory hunger, declaring that lively souls are his favorite snack, launching into a full-scale hunt. The stranger closes the distance with terrifying momentum, forcing Himajin-san and his team to retreat into a defensive formation to avoid being picked off. He acknowledges that he cannot rely on Suzuko to bail them out of this fight. As Suzuko suddenly snaps back to her senses, she fixates on the hunter with a monstrous, hungry grin, and she unleashes a storm of telekinetic projectiles to intercept the hunter's advance. The psychic shockwave ripples through the air, creating a chaotic field of energy, but the guys realize the monster can vanish at will, turning the loot hunt into a total headache. Contemplating their next move, the group weighs the risks of pushing deeper into the forest. Worried about Suzuko's unstable condition and her sudden, dangerous use of spiritual power, the team decides to hunt down other squads to find someone who knows the route. While Akatsu keeps a close eye on Himajin-san, acting on orders to play the supportive teammate, secretly plotting to build a rapport with Himajin-san to serve his own hidden agenda. Akatsu receives a direct order to monitor Himajin-san, but the task feels like a ticking time bomb. Knowing that Himajin-san is only a temporary ally who has already glimpsed his darkest secret, the shadowy boss questions if Akatsu is actually capable of eliminating him. Though Akatsu admits he stands no chance against Himajin-san's knowledge and mysterious backers, the boss threatens him with immediate disposal if he fails to prove his worth, while a massive surge of energy erupts from the dungeon, signaling that the fissure is active again. Mayor Fujinami demands a status report on the clearing operation as the situation escalates. Reports confirm that 10 people across 3 teams are currently working to stabilize the zone. Genasan assures the mayor that despite a few injuries, the operation remains under control. Hayashi Miki suddenly arrives on the scene, demanding to be let into the dungeon, refusing to stay on the sidelines while the action unfolds inside. Fujinami questions her desperate insistence, sensing there is more to her request than she is letting on. She hesitates to reveal the truth about a potential incident involving Amic Leo, forcing her to keep her secrets for now. Mayor Fujinami dismisses the talk of Lika, but he acknowledges the fissure mirrors the Black Forest, agreeing to assemble a dedicated team because the dungeon's arrival is accelerating beyond all expectations. Deep inside that same dungeon, a massive shockwave pulses outward, and the team members collapse under the strain as their physical limits are pushed to the breaking point. Ryua commands silence from the struggling group, firmly asserting her authority as the captain before she activates her detection skill to scan the immediate vicinity for their hidden enemy. A wave of energy ripples through the air, vibrating with intense hostility, followed by a sudden spiritual attack that catches the team completely off guard, knocking the group back with a violent force that leaves them gasping for breath, and the sheer magnitude of the counterstrike shatters the surrounding reality, leaving the team bewildered and questioning the origin of such overwhelming power. Ryua struggles to maintain her composure, asking for a brief moment to recover her strength, admitting that while this place feels different than usual, she might be rushing her recovery too much. She clutches a small doll, her mind drifting to a memory of Suzuko, where a younger version of her friend had gifted her the handmade toy. But the warmth of the memory is abruptly twisted by a dark, intrusive vision, where a malicious presence mocks her attachment and claims ownership of everything she holds dear. And Ryua snaps back to reality, teeth gritted in pure, concentrated frustration, pulling her weapon as she vows to make the entity pay for the mental intrusion. She signals the team to move out, declaring that she is back at full power for the fight ahead. Akatsu taunts the group, demanding to know which one of them is the true leader, and a massive pillar of dark energy erupts, tearing through the landscape with violent intensity as Felmina bursts forth from the void, fully manifested and radiating a terrifying aura, declaring her return with a sinister smirk while noting the heavy cost of her emergence. She brushes off the damage to her outfit, surrounded by swirling remnants of corrupted magic, then surveys the battlefield to mock the fallen team members, questioning if anyone remains, reaching out with a predatory grace toward the survivors, while her dark energy lashes out to test if they have truly been wiped out. Discovering that some are still breathing, which only seems to amuse her further, she forces the weakened survivors to their feet, ordering them to join her in finding the others. Her eyes scanning the area with cold, calculating intent, noting the ironic timing of their struggle, while the remaining hunters recognize the overwhelming power standing against them. She invites them to join her for a hunt that promises to be anything but merciful. As the hunter captain emerges from the shadows, his presence dwarfing the others with a level 6 danger rating, he lunges at the nearest target, claiming his next victim with a swift, brutal strike. And the impact detonates with enough force to scatter remains across the entire zone. The hunter captain's glowing red eyes lock onto his next prey, leaving the remaining hunters in a state of absolute, paralyzing dread. But one survivor urges himself to stay calm, rationalizing that this horror still pales in comparison to Suzuko. Even with Suzuko still unconscious, Himajin remains focused on her safety, but their moment of quiet is shattered as the hunter captain arrives, his sudden presence kicking up a massive shockwave that blows everyone back, while a conjoined stillborn ghost at level C emerges, ready to feed on the survivors, and the team finds themselves surrounded by this grotesque new threat, forcing Himajin to coordinate their defense while the others panic under the pressure. The hunter captain dismissively gives the ghost free rein to feast, until those glowing red eyes lock onto them with predatory hunger. Unleashing a massive suction vortex that threatens to pull them all into its maw, Himajin yells for Akatsu to target the mouth while trying to anchor their position. Though their spiritual power fails them at the worst possible moment, realizing their standard attacks are useless, Hima-Jin prepares a final desperate measure, activating a bow form conversion to unleash a concentrated blast of energy. The glowing strike launches straight toward the creature's gaping center, hitting with such intensity that the ghost lets out a deafening, piercing shriek. The resulting shockwave throws Hima-Jin backward through the air, until Felmina steps into the fray, effortlessly catching Hima-Jin midair while mocking the hunter captain's progress. Hima-Jin looks on, completely bewildered by the sudden intervention of this powerful newcomer. Felmina turns her gaze toward the creature, clearly displeased that it dared to target her interest. And she dismisses the remaining survivors as mere toys that are still inconveniently alive. The hunter captain lashes out at Felmina for her interference, calling her an interloper. Felmina ignores the threat and prompts her subordinate to handle the nuisance, showing her absolute authority as she commands complete devotion from her followers. Hima-Jin watches the exchange in pure confusion, wondering if she is actually Suzuko. Realizing that this mysterious woman might just be the edge they need against the hunters, Felmina asks for the job to be done, sparking a dark agreement from her companion. Introducing herself as Amdal of the Apparition Association, she sets the stage for a massacre. Snap of her fingers signals the start of the assault. Shadowy entities manifest instantly to swarm the unsuspecting guards. Lieutenant Sugai struggles to maintain his composure against the supernatural tide. These spectral figures mockingly refer to him as a friend before closing in for the kill. Felmina finds the concept of friendship hilarious, ordering her minions to clear the field of all these unwanted obstacles. The hunter captain finds himself quickly overwhelmed by the sudden shift in momentum. Dark energy pulses through the air as the spirits coordinate their strikes. One after another, the hunters fall under the relentless assault. High above the city, the urban sprawl remains blissfully unaware of the carnage below. A contact notes that Hayashi Miki has entered the dungeon, complicating matters further. News reaches the mayor that a major incident is unfolding within the restricted zone. Checking the status board, he discovers that the supposedly dead players are all showing signs of life again. The mayor stares at the status board in complete disbelief. While the spectral entities continue their twisted chant about friendship, surrounding the last of the hunters with a suffocating dark aura, Felmina welcomes these new arrivals into her growing collection of playthings, and Dahl observes the carnage, realizing these supposed corpses are still moving. Confirming that Felmina is far more dangerous than anyone originally anticipated, Dahl instructs his team to leave the cleanup to Hima-Jin. But he quickly finds himself accused of manipulating the bodies, realizing with a jolt that only he can perceive Felmina's presence, as she offers her twisted assistance with a mocking, elegant grace. He demands to know why he alone sees her and what happened to his men. Felmina plays coy, offering to turn everyone into her new circle of friends, leading Dahl to hurriedly decline her disturbing invitation. He tries to decipher her true objective behind this bizarre social performance, until she claims she already possesses exactly what she wants. Closing the distance to make her intentions chillingly clear, she confesses that his friendship is the only thing she truly desires, which forces Dahl to the grim realization that he has become nothing more than a puppet. Just as Suzuko finally begins to stir from her forced slumber, and Dahl manages to greet her while Felmina's influence looms over them both, Suzuko awakens to a distorted reality. Where Felmina greets her with a cheerful, eerie familiarity, Dahl realizes the figure he sees is somehow connected to the woman from the plaza, matching her appearance to the cryptic wave he witnessed earlier, forcing him to wonder why her visibility has shifted now that they are near the fortress. He dismisses concerns about his own safety to focus on the instability of Suzuko's condition, while his companions prepare for the potential slaughter of their entire team. They reflect on the legendary strength of the four knights guarding the fairytale castle. Felmina decides she will use Suzuko as a tool to clear the path forward, demanding that Dahl lead the way inside to facilitate her plans. She accepts his forced cooperation with a predatory smile, turning her attention to the rest of the group as they approach the entrance. The team arrives before the towering gates of the castle under the cover of night. Drawing closer to the structure that looms over the landscape inside the vault, piles of gold coins glisten in the dimly lit hall, where the fairytale castle casino operates as a high-stakes den for powerful beasts. The wolfman at the table spots the new arrivals, identifying the intruders with a mix of hunger and malice. Magic sensors track the blonde man as he successfully infiltrates the castle grounds, sparking a realization among the monsters that the hunters have finally breached their sanctuary. The castle security system locks onto the group, counting 5 intruders entering the hall, while the wolfman at the gambling table mocks them as prime betting material, offering anyone the right to claim the human team as a prize if they win the gamble. He tosses coins into the air to start the chaos as the monsters roar in anticipation. Dahl and his companions step deeper into the grand, eerie architecture of the castle, where he remains unbothered, focusing solely on reaching the casino floor. Felmina calls out to him, deciding she prefers to shrink down into a smaller form. She shifts her physical state while walking alongside him, appearing satisfied and light as she completes the transformation. Dahl checks on her status, unaware that the castle's environment is already suppressing their abilities. His team members panic as they realize their spiritual power is rapidly draining away. He observes his own flickering energy, noting he is faring slightly better than the others. A red system warning flashes across the room to confirm that uninvited guests are under restriction. Felmina stops to greet him with a feigned, innocent curiosity, tilting her head to hide her true intentions while she studies him back. Doll mentally flags her as a high-level boss monster. Knowing she is far more than she appears, he keeps a close watch on her strange movement techniques and her control over the corpses. The group suddenly freezes when an unexpected sound echoes through the hall. They scramble to get out of the way just as a projectile strikes their position. A dark figure emerges from the gloom to launch a direct assault on the intruders. A level C Centaur Knight crashes into the hall to terminate the intruders, and Dahl recognizes the elite guard immediately. The Knight locks onto their position with lethal intent, unleashing a massive discharge of energy that sends the team reeling back, leaving them scrambling to recover from the unexpected blast. As the team considers a retreat while the threat remains high, their dialogue reveals they are being watched from afar by the casino's sadistic elite, who revels in the chaos and hopes to see the players drown in a sea of blood. A mysterious noblewoman steps in to command the scene, and Dahl decides to test his luck by asking for her assistance. The woman reveals her true, terrifying aura as she prepares to intervene, prompting a horrified realization from the spectators who recognize her power. They identify her as the Monster Queen Doll, the casino's most dangerous variable. She turns her focus toward the struggling group as they cry out for help, then unleashes a barrage of dark magic that tears through the battlefield. The overwhelming force slams into the Centaur Knight, and she laughs at the sheer resistance of her target. The Knight struggles against her crushing influence. Unable to withstand the pressure, the armor begins to buckle under her control. She offers a twisted invitation to Dahl as the situation spirals further into her favor. The Centaur Knight realizes he has been exposed by the Monster Queen, and he is sent flying across the floor by her overwhelming magical output. Dahl watches the destruction with a mix of genuine concern and calculated interest. The Queen dismisses the damage as a minor accident. Feigning innocence for the crowd, Akatsu approaches her, eager to capitalize on the shift in the fight's momentum. He praises her display of power while masking his own greedy intentions. Meanwhile, the casino elites observe the carnage from afar, placing bets on the chaos. The high-ranking monsters rage at their champion for failing to handle a simple intruder. A powerful fist slams down, signaling the start of a direct confrontation. The lion-headed beast demands an explanation from the wolf for this unexpected interference. The wolf warns them that Dahl is notorious for turning humans into her personal playthings. Everyone present agrees that her reputation for cruelty remains entirely justified. They track the scene through a projection, watching as she corners her prey. Akatsu begins planning how to exploit the Queen's dominance to conquer this dungeon. Dahl begins to channel a volatile, dark energy that begins to warp the surrounding space. She finds the sensation of her own power to be deeply comforting. The intensity of the aura continues to swell, drawing the attention of every monster nearby. Dark energy erupts outward, forcing the spectators to retreat from the encroaching pressure. Akatsu notices her behavior shifting towards something far more unpredictable and dangerous. The watching monsters decide that the chaos is their cue to hunt the intruders down. Dahl unleashes a massive wave of dark energy directly at Akatsu. He stands his ground but feels the crushing weight of her aura. Suddenly, a voice from the shadows calls him Daddy. Suzuko lunges forward and slams into him, knocking the wind out of his chest. She claims to be his #1 friend, forcing Akatsu to realize she has completely lost her grip. The crazed girl grins with glowing eyes as she reminds him of their twisted connection. Onlookers watching the projection realize the wolf betrayed them by hiding how far gone she truly is. Furious monsters turn on the wolf for playing them. While the team scrambles to stabilize their position, they spot their actual target fading away. Akatsu demands an explanation for the chaos. Dahl interrupts, mocking him for forgetting her after everything they have been through. Purple energy begins to consume his body as she confirms her plan to forcibly transfer him. Suzuko screams for Dahl to let him go. She tries to interfere but finds herself easily shoved aside by Dahl's raw power. Dahl drags the struggling Akatsu into the void. The space around them warps until they completely vanish from sight. Suzuko is left behind, staring at the empty space where Akatsu was just a moment ago. Heavy armored boots echo in the hallway as the reinforcements finally move in. A squad of level C Shining Knights marches toward the remaining intruders. The monsters watch the arrivals and decide the situation is finally turning in their favor. The remaining team members realize Akatsu is gone and the Shining Knights are closing in fast. Orders fly to intercept the enemies while others search for the missing man. A massive surge of red energy erupts nearby. The system registers a sudden dungeon irregularity upgrade. A monstrous entity senses a familiar scent. The Queen of Disintegration manifests and vows to find her father. The knights advance through the hall as she prepares to strike. She lashes out at the intruders with overwhelming force. The team members struggle to identify the source of this sudden power. Concern mounts for those caught in the blast. Everyone watches in disbelief as the boss monster emerges. She identifies the intruders as the ones who caused her previous disappearance. The monster realizes someone else has been brought into the fray. Waves of distortion rip through the hallway. A hand reaches out to initiate a forced transfer. The captive is pulled through the void and demands to know their destination. His captor insists he must remember his past. Confusion sets in as he denies having any connection to her. She mocks his feigned ignorance and links him to the Great One. The realization hits that he is being targeted for his connection to Suzuko's father. Felmina demands that Akatsu identify her true identity, pointing out a doll that is supposed to trigger his hidden memories, and she claims this is the very first creation he ever brought into existence. Forcing Akatsu into a corner where he realizes his life depends on guessing the right name, so he braces himself as she stalks closer to him in the ruins. while her aura flares with intense, volatile energy as she dares him to speak her name, calling him out for his supposed amnesia among old friends. But Akatsu knows that admitting his ignorance will surely be his end, so he remains silent while weighing the consequences of his next words, hoping to find a way out of this deadly confrontation. And Felmina grows impatient with his hesitation, grabbing Akatsu while she demands to know why he refuses to answer her. Yet Akatsu shifts his demeanor and challenges her to just kill him instead, which only makes Felmina more desperate to extract the truth about her own origins, leaning into his personal space to press for any scrap of recognition, and she questions what else he might be hiding about her past. But his continued inability to remember leaves her visibly shaken and confused. So Akatsu cunningly shifts the blame onto the monster god for tampering with her memories, and Felmina begins to doubt her own reality as the pieces of her fractured mind struggle to align, while Akatsu silently celebrates the success of his manipulation, knowing his lie has bought him safety for now. Akatsu consoles Felmina with a cold, calculated touch, pretending they are both victims of the monster god's memory tampering. And Felmina begins to question her own identity as she stares at her hands. But the sudden, violent arrival of a monstrous force shatters the tension, forcing Akatsu to drop his act as they both look toward the source of the disturbance, where the creature Suzuko reveals herself, clearly hunting for Akatsu, and the system identifies her as the Fairytale Kingdom boss in an insane state, which leaves Akatsu realizing he is completely outmatched and unable to fight. He triggers a speed tidal to narrowly evade her incoming spiritual attack, while Suzuko relentlessly pursues him with a terrifying, grab-like reach, calling out for her father as she closes the distance. And the resulting explosion of energy sends Akatsu flying backward, where Felmina tries to intervene by pleading with Suzuko to remember who she is, but Suzuko screams that she is a liar and refuses to stop her assault, as Felmina dons a mysterious mask to tap into her own hidden power. Preparing to face off against the boss in a dangerous game, and Akatsu notices the mask is the key to Felmina's current surge in strength, realizing that his infiltration of the castle was doomed from the moment he brought her home, especially since he unwittingly provided the boss with her own reinforcements, leaving Akatsu to face the lethal consequences of his own hubris. Akatsu desperately calls out to check on his companion, but Felmina's expression shifts behind the mask. And her aura flares up as she fully taps into this terrifying new power, launching a barrage of energy projectiles at the target, which forces Akatsu to scramble away to avoid being shredded, while he desperately tries to parry the incoming assault with his blade, and Felmina mocks him, demanding to know if he has finally regained his memories before she strikes the ground with enough force to warp the very air, causing Doll to vanish from her spot in a blink. Though Suzuko quickly spots her still standing in the wreckage, as Akatsu warns Doll that she has no chance against such overwhelming odds, while Suzuko declares that she refuses to be separated from her friends, and the shadows around them begin to manifest into hostile dark entities, causing the surroundings to groan under the weight of this new threat, as Suzuko multiplies herself into a legion of identical, glowing forms. Nakatsu realizes in horror that she is converting everyone into her own clones, before these manifestations start zipping through the battlefield at blinding speeds, while Suzuko laughs, eager to prolong the chaos she has unleashed, and the massive influx of energy causes the dungeon to violently crack, as the system issues a final warning of a critical dungeon irregularity. More rifts are tearing the sky open, forcing the team to prioritize clearing the dungeon before everything collapses. As they realize the dungeon advent is accelerating faster than anticipated, then another spatial tear erupts in the middle of Getsurin City, leaving the observers to notice something deeply off about its signature, before a lethal projectile strikes down an unsuspecting target, as a high-caliber firearm drifts through the unstable energy field, and a masked, gunslinging entity emerges to claim its fresh prey, while the newcomer tracks his targets with cold, mechanical precision, which sends the bystanders into a panicked realization that a monster is loose. So they scramble for their lives as the hunter begins his slaughter, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake across the city skyline. Meanwhile, at the Fairytale Kingdom casino an hour earlier, the Beastkin were searching for the Queen of Disintegration, and the casino structure itself begins to succumb to the sudden infiltration, as the intruders demand to know who dared breach their territory. Then a mysterious woman greets them with a casual, mocking wave, while she realizes they are the first arrivals among the other job holders, and she questions the whereabouts of the brat who led them here, which provokes the wolf beast into threatening her for trespassing in their home, so she scoffs at his arrogance before the confrontation inevitably turns violent. The wolf beast lunges at the mysterious woman, but she effortlessly slashes through his defenses, leaving a glowing red trail as her blade carves through his guard with clinical precision, and she does not stop, following through with a strike that demands total submission, forcing the beastkin to collapse as his arrogance is cut down in an instant, after which the guards realize their mistake and immediately drop their weapons to beg for mercy, while she stands there, unimpressed by their sudden shift from aggression to cowardice. So the lead wolf beast tries to salvage the situation by offering her a seat. Then he introduces a floating orb as an entertainment device to monitor the humans inside, and she stares at the projection, clearly intrigued by the display of human activity, but her focus shifts as she demands they find the arrogant teenager she's been hunting, ignoring the wolf's desperate attempts to keep her compliant and focused on her job. While a younger girl in the orb's display tries to push away the hands touching her head, the device pulses as it highlights Ryua, confirming he is the exact target she needs, which reveals his location to the woman who has been searching for him to join her team, and her aura flares with intense, predatory intent as she prepares to claim him, until a massive, disruptive sound echoes from outside, cutting off their conversation. Because a violent surge of spiritual energy begins tearing through the dungeon's foundation, causing her to recognize the familiar power as the same one she felt upon entering, so she demands to know what is happening, already moving to investigate the disturbance, and she leaves the confused guards behind, rushing toward the source of the chaos. The woman lands in the heart of the chaos, wasting no time before she engages. And she invokes the Shadow Dragon, calling upon its dark power to manifest, as the spectral entity surges forward to possess her body for the coming fight, resulting in a massive shockwave that tears through the immediate surroundings, while the impact sends bodies flying, leaving the targets reeling from the sudden assault, and Akatsu stares at the encroaching shadows, realizing he is completely surrounded by clones. While the laughter of his twisted, corrupted manifestations echoes through the chamber, and Akatsu gasps as his spiritual corruption spirals, threatening to consume his remaining control just as a stitched-up monstrous entity lunges for him with lethal, possessive intent, so he activates his synchronization skill, praying for a random ability to turn the tide, which gifts him the Eye of Truth, granting him a 20-minute window of perfect clarity. And he prepares to unleash a blitzkrieg, ready to dismantle the army of enemies, while a clone taunts him with mock friendship, closing in for a killing blow, but the Eye of Truth pierces through the illusion, revealing the true path to victory because he can track every single movement of the clones as if they were standing still, and he strikes back with calculated precision, forcing the enemy to shift their formation. While the synchronization timer begins its countdown, pushing him to end the fight quickly, and he realizes that defeating a clone forces the remaining army to adapt their strategy, so Akatsu commits to an all-out offensive, pouring his remaining energy into the assault, because he senses the familiar, overwhelming spiritual power belonging to Suzuko radiating from the dark. The mysterious woman realizes Akatsu is mimicking her abilities, and she applauds his talent while radiating an unsettling, overwhelming aura of power, so Akatsu prepares to weave through her incoming spiritual projectiles because he needs to find an opening for a decisive counterattack, and he triggers his weapon's bow form conversion, shifting his combat strategy midair while the woman mocks his agility, laughing off his desperate attempts to close the distance. Then Akatsu launches a high-speed strike, pushing his physical limits to the edge. But she unleashes a massive, swirling torrent of energy, forcing him into a full retreat, and the sheer scale of her blast leaves him scrambling to avoid total annihilation. So he focuses on finding Suzuko's main body amidst the chaotic battlefield, but a sudden sharp pain pierces his senses as the strain of combat takes its toll, and his vision begins to glitch under the pressure of the Eye of Truth. So the woman lunges at him with terrifying speed, catching him completely off guard. Then Akatsu realizes his weapons are on cooldown, leaving him with no choice but to bet everything, and he initiates a high-risk synchronization, hoping to scavenge a new skill from his opponent, while his internal corruption levels spike, threatening to consume his consciousness entirely, but the gamble pays off as his aura shifts, darkening with a new stolen influence, and he instantly acquires the Spirit Silk Thread ability, immediately putting it to use. So Akatsu lunges forward to seize control of the battlefield with his newfound power, and he successfully grabs the woman's arm, finally turning the tables on her dominance. Akatsu forces the spirit silk thread onto the woman, pinning her down as the corruption tears through her defenses, and he follows up with a brutal physical strike to ensure she stays grounded, while his heightened senses track the flow of energy to a distant, ethereal figure hovering above, which reveals the woman's true main body hidden in plain sight, so he immediately triggers Spirit Leap to close the distance before she can adapt, but the woman stares at her own hands in confusion, struggling to grasp why her power feels so strange, and she realizes the connection to her abilities has been completely severed. Then Akatsu materializes right in front of her, launching a direct assault with overwhelming intensity. So the ground beneath them shatters under the sheer weight of his relentless offensive, and a massive cloud of dust erupts, obscuring the brutal exchange from view, which clears to show the woman reeling from the impact, blood staining her dress as she tries to regain her footing but stumbles under the pressure of his follow-up. Then he grips her throat, cutting off her breath and any hope of a counterattack, and Akatsu taunts her by calling her Dal-chan, mocking her weakened state. So she gasps for air, begging him to let her go while he looms over her, but Akatsu only laughs, relishing the sight of her crumbling composure, and he notices his stolen skill is already beginning to flicker and expire. Then the woman smiles back, revealing she has actually lured him right into her trap, so a monstrous, shadowy entity lunges from the darkness to intercept him, and the tables flip again as the shadow slams into Akatsu, tearing him away from his target. Akatsu stares in disbelief as his vision shifts, the red glow of his borrowed power beginning to pulse erratically, and the shadow entity erupts with a shockwave that forces him to retreat, sending him skidding across the stone floor while he struggles to regain his composure. Then the captive Suzuko calls out to him, her hunger overriding the chaos as she questions his status, while a mysterious observer watches the scene unfold, recognizing the woman as the legendary Queen of Disintegration. And the beastkin companion nearby trembles, terrified by the sheer presence of such a high-level dungeon boss, although the observer remains fascinated, sensing an incredible and dangerous potential radiating from the conflict. Then his eyes lock onto the distant, swirling aura of the combatants, recognizing the figure of Ryua standing amidst the malice, her presence feeling distinctly inhuman, and she prepares for battle, her aura flaring with a predatory intensity that dwarfs the surrounding shadows. while Suzuko muses on her own recognition of the newcomer, wondering about her connection to her father, but Akatsu ignores the speculation as his own consciousness begins to fracture under the strain of the expiring skill, and he freezes when Ryua turns her gaze directly toward him, the weight of her attention pinning him in place. Then she shrieks in outrage at the mention of the word daddy, clearly offended by the absurdity of the situation, so she descends upon the group with terrifying speed, demanding to know what has been done to her associate. While the puppet master White watches from the sidelines, her smirk betraying a cold, calculated interest, and she warns Ryua to stay out of the way, claiming that she alone possesses the right to intervene. Then White unleashes a surge of concentrated energy, the power spiraling outward from her core as she declares her absolute ownership over the battered Akatsu, intent on claiming her prize despite the interference, and Ryua bellows at her, branding the woman an absolute idiot for her reckless display of dominance. The system flags a synchronization warning with monster devouring already active, and Akatsu, realizing the situation is spiraling, desperately urges Suzuko to escape, but Ryua lunges forward, claiming her daddy and demanding an end to the petty fighting, leaving the others to panic as the sheer intensity of the clash threatens to collapse the dungeon, which finally triggers a massive system error throughout the crumbling structure. And the Fairytale Kingdom event forcibly initiates, tearing through the reality of the zone, shifting the scene to Getsurin City 1 hour after the disastrous advent, where the dazed Akatsu picks himself up from the wreckage, checking his own pulse and immediately calling out for Suzuko. Then he opens his status window to find his job class has updated to Dread Keeper, and he scans the cryptic system messages for any clue on what happened next, only to discover a new limited-time event called Blood Hunting, which promises a unique S-tier item to whoever vanquishes the most monsters in real time. But the system reveals the first unique monster is none other than the entity he just faced, accompanied by another high-threat target identified only as the doll, and the Queen of Disintegration appears as a final nightmarish addition to the roster, leaving Akatsu reeling as he realizes the dungeon is hunting Suzuko just like the Black Forest entity, so he questions if some higher game master entity is pulling the strings behind her disappearance, until the sound of rhythmic metallic footsteps echoes through the streets, and a squad of heavily armored knights advances on his position to enforce the hunt. Akatsu realizes he has to prioritize Suzuko's safety above all else, so he shifts his focus to the armored knights closing in on his position, and he lunges forward to intercept the lead attacker with a burst of green energy, screaming his frustration at the incessant clanking noise, while he slams his palm against the knight's incoming blade to deflect the strike, forcing the metal giant back with a display of raw, uncontrolled power, though the strain begins to manifest in sharp, pulsating veins across his face. Because the spirit corruption levels are climbing far higher than he ever intended, and his head throbs with an agonizing, splitting sensation that threatens to drop him, as the system confirms his corruption depth is at 31%, while he curses the relentless nature of these fused, monstrous opponents. So he grips his own blade tighter to channel the last of his focus into the fight, dashing toward the remaining knights to keep the pressure on, while one knight attempts a heavy downward swing to crush him, and Akatsu slides beneath the guard to deliver a counterstrike, piercing the armor with a clean, lethal motion. So the knight collapses into the debris, finally defeated, leaving Akatsu to pivot and face the rest of the squad, where he notes his combat reflexes are still sharp despite the physical toll, and he pauses to stabilize the bleeding on his hand before the next wave arrives. His hand is still pulsing with that sickly green corruption. Then Akatsu realizes a fresh wave of armored knights has surrounded him, before a barrage of golden projectiles screams out from the darkness, forcing him into a desperate scramble to dodge the lethal light, and he barely clears the blast zone as the ground detonates behind him. While the shockwave tears through the surrounding area with terrifying force, luckily Akatsu manages to deploy his spirit barrier just in time to survive. Searching the shadows for the source of that sniper-like precision, he spots the high-ranking knights watching from a vantage point. The system identifies the attacker as a Flash Knight C+, which immediately begins charging a new concentrated wave of energy, aiming directly at Akatsu with zero hesitation, launching a massive beam that pulverizes the concrete where he stood, forcing Akatsu to realize he is completely outgunned at this range. The entire area erupts in a blinding flash of golden destruction, then the Flash Knight charges forward to close the distance, unleashing a relentless rain of energy bolts that pin Akatsu down, pushing him to his absolute limit as he tries to find an opening. Finally, one stray blast clips his shoulder and sends him sprawling, leaving Akatsu gasping for air as the enemy prepares the final blow. Akatsu realizes the spiritual corruption is spiking while Suzuko remains trapped, and he gains a new summoning skill despite the system withholding any useful intel, prompting him to retreat across the ruins to escape the Flash Knight's range. But the knight ignores the distance and lunges into a brutal close-quarters strike, marking the environment with a targeting laser that locks onto his position, which unleashes a devastating energy barrage that tears through the debris, forcing Akatsu to scramble backward just to avoid being vaporized. As he realizes these enemies are just as dangerous at melee range, while the Flash Knight follows up with a massive overhead cleaving motion, and Akatsu barely manages to dodge the crushing blow, narrowly escaping a point-blank blast that incinerates the ground behind him, so he attempts to discard the volatile, exploding energy residue clinging to him. Then he notices his own reflection shifting into an unnatural, dark hue. While the system reports a critical spirit corruption spike to depth 33, and the unusual system glitch confirms that this corruption is unlike anything seen before, leading Akatsu to conclude that the enemy's power is actively compromising the system, which leaves him with no choice but to unleash his own unstable, corrupted energy, so he pivots after narrowly dodging the knight's latest sword swing, and Akatsu channels his full volatile power into a desperate counterattack. Finally colliding with the Flash Knight in a blinding explosion of black and gold. Akatsu feels the corrupting energy surging through his veins, and the Flash Knight's blade cracks under the pressure of his counter, forcing the knight back as Akatsu unleashes a wave of raw, dark power, while his own hand transforms, tainted by the spirit energy he absorbed earlier, confirming his theory that this corruption acts as a poison against these constructs. So Akatsu realizes the tables have turned and watches the knight struggle. Then the armor begins to shatter under the weight of the encroaching corruption, and the knight's core pulses with unstable light as its defenses fail, causing the massive warrior to stumble and crash into the surrounding debris, until the entire structure of the knight starts to buckle under the strain, where a clean strike marks the turning point of the entire engagement. And Akatsu gains a level as his proficiency with this dark power grows, noticing how easily high-density corruption dismantles these supposed elite guardians, which gives him a terrifying new perspective on his own potential. So he taunts the remaining enemies to test the limits of his evolution, and the nearby Flash Knights tremble as they process the shift in power, before Akatsu launches himself into the air to close the distance, crashing into the formation with a force that shreds their metal armor, while the shockwave of his landing clears the immediate area of threats, and he locks blades with the remaining knight to finish the slaughter. A system error message flashes red, blocking Akatsu from summoning an ally, but he ignores the glitch and drives his blade straight into the Flash Knight, deciding to force the summon skill anyway despite the warnings. While the onlookers curse him for ruining their bets and ruining the dungeon's flow, then a level 8 Wolfman breaks free from the dungeon's binding restrictions, and the beast sets its sights on tearing Akatsu apart limb from limb, unleashing a wave of dark energy that forces the nearby knights to scatter, where swirling green orbs begin to manifest in the middle of the chaos, and Akatsu manipulates the energy to increase his muster quantity, pulling multiple summoned entities into the fray simultaneously, with the system signaling a successful trio of summons, which leaves Akatsu balancing the unstable power in his own hands, though the system demands manual confirmation to proceed with the activation, and he taps the prompt to finalize the dangerous process, noticing with fascination as the summoned spirits begin to fuse into something new, while a massive surge of power ripples out from the merge, catching the surrounding Flash Knights completely off guard with its intensity. So the Wolfman screams at the knights to stop cowering and coordinate their defense, mockingly berating them for being intimidated by a simple human brat. Then Akatsu unleashes the fused constructs to tear through the enemy ranks. The Wolfman stares in disbelief as his expectations get completely shattered, while a Flash Knight struggles to maintain his blade against the overwhelming pressure. Because the system successfully registers the fusion of a B+ rank fusion knight, and the sheer force of this manifestation fractures the very ground beneath the combatants, forcing the Wolfman to question how Akatsu even managed such a twisted feat. As Akatsu watches the experience points roll in and continues his dark experimentation, explaining that forcing spirits to fuse is the secret to his terrifying new power, which leaves the battlefield reeling from the arrival of this wicked construct. And Akatsu revels in his transformation, identifying himself as the true puppet master, while the Wolfman realizes this human's potential defies every law of nature they know, shifting the scene to a flashback where players gather across the game world, where the system broadcasts a notification for the limited-time blood hunting event, and Akatsu chooses to engage with the prompt to secure his participation, triggering a massive energy surge that envelops the entire Getsuren city region. As the system transports players into the heart of this lethal new challenge, and the interface announces the official commencement of the blood hunting event, declaring that the magnificent slaughter feast has finally begun for all involved, while golden energy sparks across the battlefield to mark the arrival of new threats with a blinding flash of light signaling the start of the carnage, and Rank 10 fighter Mike enters the fray, declaring his intention to claim first place. Mike steps onto the battlefield, warning everyone to clear out or face certain death, and the low-level players realize their chances of scoring kills have plummeted with a rank of powerhouse present, while Mike notices a sudden gathering of enemies emerging from the shadows. As a swarm of armed figures in trench coats closes in on their position, one of the gunmen fires a shot directly at the group, but a brilliant golden light erupts to deflect the projectile midair. And a figure emerges from the blinding radiance, revealing her presence to the entire area, forcing the nearby players to retreat as she steps onto the scene, where Mika Pest, the level A holy emissary, mocks Mike's ambition to take first place, leaving Mike to stare down his new rival as the tension in the air thickens, before a massive beast lunges into the fray, dismissing the combatants as mere insects, and the creature unleashes a wave of dark, pulsing energy that shakes the very ground. So Mike grins at the challenge, clearly impressed by the monster's raw power, just as a new player arrives, signaling a level up that creates a massive shockwave in the city, where Iria, the level 5 master of ingenuity, introduces herself as a new contender for the top spot, while green energy begins to swirl around a mysterious cloaked figure standing on a rooftop, and this stranger taunts the lower-ranked players for their lack of courage in the face of carnage. As a terrifying, wolf-like combatant charges forward with lethal intent, declaring that with the Queen of Disintegration on his side, he has nothing to fear, and Akatsu watches from the shadows, daring his opponents to test their strength against him. The wolf beast lunges with a deafening roar, clearly ready to tear through everything in its path, but green energy erupts from the ground, intercepting the massive creature midair. Akatsu stands his ground as his specialized power forces the beast into a defensive retreat, while the monster mocks Akatsu's humanity, convinced that his physical strength will easily prevail. Yet Akatsu barely flinches, unimpressed by the beast's display of raw, unrefined aggression, and the predator suddenly recoils in agony as its own hand begins to warp and mutate, because Akatsu reveals his ability to inflict spiritual corruption, a poison that drives even elite knights to madness. So the wolf screams in terror as the corruption spreads across its face, and the creature begs for mercy, forced to its knees by the sheer agony of the infection, while Akatsu realizes the system is intentionally pitting these powerful entities against each other to clear the board. So he grabs the wolf by the throat, offering a twisted ultimatum to save its own life, and Akatsu proposes a new set of rules where the beast serves him instead of fighting for the system. Meanwhile, a squad of mysterious, dark-clad knights arrives, sensing the shift in the battlefield's control, and these armored figures demand to know why a mere human is commanding their forces. So Akatsu instantly orders his new puppet to slaughter the knights for questioning his authority. Then he feels the rush of a system-wide rank up, confirming his plan is working perfectly, and the wolf beast accepts its new role, handing over the captive Suzuko to the fused knight. While Akatsu calls upon the Queen of Disintegration to secure his latest assets, and the captive girl produces a glowing orb, unaware of the immense power she is holding, so Akatsu claims the rare spirit-type item for himself, ready to exploit the system's corruption for his own gain. Akatsu grills the wolf beast about the missing casino tools, but the creature admits the dungeon was completely wiped out, so Akatsu tells Red Riding Hood to handle the search while he inspects his loot. And he spots a mysterious item amidst the surrounding ruins, which turns out to be a mask that belonged to the Lady Doll. Then Akatsu realizes this is the exact mask he had swiped earlier as the accessory begins aggressively absorbing his spiritual power, and a strange green energy envelops him, radiating from the object while the wolf beast watches, curious about the sudden surge in his aura, so Akatsu decides to wear the mask to see if he can control the flow. And the suppression of his spiritual corruption is immediate, clearing his persistent headache. Then the wolf beast asks if he wants it to hunt for more artifacts, so Akatsu orders the beast to find the Lady Doll who originally owned the mask, and he confirms his own authority over the situation with a confident smirk, while his system status updates to show the corruption level is finally stable, and Akatsu notices the entire blood hunting ranking board has mysteriously recovered. But a sudden, massive explosion rocks the ground right in front of them, so the wolf beast jumps to attention, sensing a hostile knight closing in, and an arrogant player steps out of the dust, demanding to see Akatsu's id, while Akatsu stares down this new challenger, unfazed by the sudden confrontation. The knight declares that players are forbidden from entering under the new rules, and a squad of armored monsters surrounds the area to enforce the decree. So Akatsu finds himself completely mobbed by these mechanical soldiers, but he stays cool and sarcastically tells the knight to get lost, which really sets the player off, leading him to charge in with a shout, though a solid barrier instantly materializes to protect the area from his strike. Because this cocky level 10 player thinks his rank makes him untouchable, yet the knight's attacks are effortlessly shattered by the monster's overwhelming force. And the challenger realizes too late that these creatures are way beyond his league. Then the massive impact clears the immediate vicinity of his presence, so Akatsu claims the points for the kill and orders the rest thrown out, while he watches his score climb, noting how the system exploits them for points, and he commands the wolf beast to take charge of the remaining fused knights, because they have exactly 12 hours left to seize total control of this dungeon. Then the armored squad moves out to clear the remaining hostiles, and the pack of monsters surges forward to hunt down every last intruder, so Akatsu pulls up his interface to analyze his current power levels, while he reviews his data and worries about Suzuko's ongoing poor condition, and he investigates the job trait that allows him to summon more monsters. Plus, he reflects on how the warped mask continues to soothe his spiritual pain. Akatsu analyzes the mask's ability to absorb his excessive spiritual power. Then he catches a sudden visitor appearing with a glowing orb in hand, as the girl reveals she has located the group of survivors instead of the queen. So Akatsu watches as the survivors emerge from the portal, surprised they made it through. He immediately orders the girl to refocus her efforts on finding the queen, and his attention shifts to Ryua, deciding she is the easiest target to confront. The group discusses their risky plan to infiltrate the enemy lines while Akatsu listens in. They intend to get captured and then execute a surprise strike on the monster boss. Footsteps echo through the hall as the intruders advance toward the center. The surrounding knights drop to their knees in a sudden display of forced loyalty. Akatsu adjusts his mask, prepared to reveal his true presence to the group. He steps forward, greeting the intruders with a calm and chilling afternoon. Ryua and her companions recognize him instantly and go rigid with pure disbelief. He demands a private audience with the woman among them, ignoring their shock. His presence leaves the group frantically questioning how he managed to arrive here. Akatsu ignores the noise and corners Ryua, accusing her of searching for Suzuko. He reveals his unique power to peer directly into the hearts of monsters. Ryua questions why that matters, trying to hide her true nature from his gaze. He cuts through her act, sensing the monster hiding beneath her human appearance. Akatsu grabs her, mocking her defense while claiming authority as Suzuko's father. Akatsu reminds Ryua that she and Suzuko are now prime targets for every player in the game. Ryua flares with red energy, desperate to lash out at him despite her current limitations. He points out she is trapped in a fragile human vessel and lacks the power to stop him. She curses her own weakness, knowing a real body would let her end him instantly. Akatsu dismisses her anger, shifting his focus to the mysterious relic he intends to master. Ryua warns him he is gambling with his life, but he just mocks her inability to act. She realizes she badly underestimated his intellect and capability. He begins to manipulate the relic, impressed by the complex spiritual power woven into its design. Energy surges as Akatsu initiates the override sequence. System notification confirms the stolen ornament is now officially in his possession. His eyes glow with a digital blue light as the artifact's influence takes hold. The environment around him begins to glitch and fracture as the item's power reacts to his own. Reality shifts into a sterile hospital room, catching him completely off guard. He spots a young boy kneeling beside a girl hooked up to life support. The kid screams a desperate promise to protect her. Akatsu observes the memory, questioning the identity of the boy and the girl. The boy turns, calling out to his sensei with a tearful plea for help. A distorted, digital figure looms over the boy, promising to begin the surgery. The man in the lab coat claims the boy is his most exceptional student. A monstrous entity suddenly snaps, screaming for the doctor to die as the vision turns violent. Akatsu struggles to regain his composure as the green aura of the stolen artifact pulses around him. The mysterious figure mocks him for draining the spiritual power so effortlessly. Confusion hits hard when he realizes that memory was not his own. Ryua notices his sudden physical decline and questions if he pushed himself too far. He demands to know if she recognizes the item as belonging to her friend, gripping her collar tightly. He forces her to face the truth. Desperation drives him to scream for the girl's actual name. She tries to pull away in shock, but he refuses to let go until he gets an answer. The name White slips out, leaving Ryua stunned by his sudden insight. He laughs off the confusion, vowing to drag the full truth out of her. Scenes shift to Getsurin City, where a dark, multi-limbed entity stands in the shadows. Akatsu admires the perfect power radiating from the artifact in his hand. The monster, identified as Suzuko, looms over her captive with glowing red eyes. A desperate plea for escape echoes as the entity prepares to strike. White attempts to intervene, but a massive energy blade slices through the space. Akatsu spots Hayashi Miki arriving on the scene to challenge him for the kill. Suzuko stands her ground against Miki, refusing to back down from the confrontation. Miki draws her own glowing weapon, ready to tear through anyone in her path. The monster recognizes a familiar, dangerous scent radiating from her opponent. Miki identifies the witch and realizes the connection to Amake Leo's daughter. Akatsu taunts Hayashi Miki to try and shred him. Hayashi Miki lunges forward with a massive energy strike. A blinding explosion rocks the city skyline. The wolf-like monster stares in confusion at the sudden blast. Akatsu reveals he trapped Hayashi Miki inside a null domain that cancels all abilities. Hayashi Miki realizes she fell for a deliberate trap. Akatsu grabs her while mocking her as a test subject for his new toy. He pulls out the doll's heart, a relic holding the power of a fairy tale boss. Energy flows into the artifact as he prepares to use it on his high-ranking opponent. The system confirms spiritual power activation and locks Hayashi Miki into 60% control state. The witch Suzuko breaks free and lunges at Hayashi Miki. Akatsu tells her it is too late and commands Puppet Number 1 to take the fight. Hayashi Miki tries to summon origin magic in a desperate bid to counter. The magic of creation flares, but the witch remains relentless in her assault. Shadow tendrils wrap around the battlefield as the creature closes in. The captive struggles against the tightening magical bonds. Glowing red eyes pierce through the dark energy surrounding the witch. Akatsu gloats over having two powerful targets locked in combat. The system ranking board updates, showing Akatsu sitting comfortably in 4th place. He prepares to finish the dungeon once his score surpasses the keeper's. Hayashi Miki channels her origin magic to regain agency, but the witch Suzuko is already being crushed by the encroaching shadow vines. White appears within a protective barrier and shuts down the magic. Akatsu realizes the situation is spiraling out of his control. Energy surges as White demands the release of Suzuko. Blast of spirit shock forces Akatsu to back away. The force of the impact shatters the surrounding ground. Akatsu checks the system and learns White is only a level F. Power readings spike as White begins to manifest a new technique. A sudden burst of energy knocks everyone across the field. White dashes forward to catch the falling Miki. Suzuko breaks free from the vines and calls out in confusion. The witch focuses her gaze on the new arrival. Mysterious girl intervenes to help Suzuko disentangle. The stolen heart of White starts to react to the proximity of the others. Suzuko realizes the implications of the heart being taken. Akatsu decides that keeping Miki alive is necessary for his interrogation. The level F designation mocks Akatsu as he struggles to maintain his lead. Frustration sets in as he realizes his opponent still has hidden reserves. The null domain reactivates and traps them all within the field. Akatsu prepares to neutralize the incoming attack, but the energy field shatters instantly upon contact, and the sheer force of the impact leaves him bleeding and clutching his arm. While the Rod of Authority clatters uselessly against the debris, Luxter Ilya reveals his extensive knowledge of Akatsu's true identity and inventory, gloating over his advantage before closing in for the finish. Yet Akatsu refuses to accept defeat just yet, triggering a core explosion protocol to wipe out the entire area. And he laughs maniacally while threatening to drag everyone into the void with him, forcing his allies to scramble for an immediate escape. But Ilya counters the detonation by forcibly hacking into the system, and the core explosion sequence is aborted mid-process through spirit corruption, leaving Ilya to demand an explanation for the unauthorized attempt. As the overwhelming pressure of his interference crushes the remaining resistance, and he commands the wolf to secure the captive, before turning his attention to the stolen heart artifact in his possession, checking on the condition of the injured girl as he holds the pulsating gem which begins to stabilize her life force once more, so she clings to him, desperate for reassurance and food, leaving Ilya to address the tension with Ryua as the dust finally settles. Suzuko tries to deflect the conversation, but the weight of her sudden confession hits everyone like a truck, and she literally calls Ilya daddy while clinging to him, leaving Ryua completely spiraling in the background as the system interrupts the chaos to update the blood hunting rankings, and the limited time event officially concludes, shattering the reality of the dungeon around them, with the system declaring the keeper as the victor despite 0 unique monster kills. While the space itself begins to collapse and reconfigure back into a stable state, and the wolf watches in confusion as the dungeon environment returns to normal, leaving the remaining armored entities to stand guard amidst the shifting debris, as White emerges from the distortion, finally beginning to reclaim her lost memories, which makes Suzuko recognize her immediately, calling out for her lost sister. And Ryua starts to put the pieces together, realizing the complex web of connections between them all, while Suzuko stares at Ilya, wondering if he really is the key to her father's past. But their moment is cut short as the profiteering fishermen arrive to claim their share of the spoils, and they confidently step forward, unaware that they are walking into a total bloodbath as a massive burst of energy erupts, signaling that the danger is far from over. While Suzuko returns Ilya's mask to him, trying to keep him anchored despite the surrounding madness, and the fishermen realize their mistake the hard way as a sudden attack tears through their ranks, because a monstrous, multi-limbed entity breaks through the fray, screaming for everyone to clear a path, which forces a terrified Ryua to cry out for her sister in the middle of the carnage, and the surviving scavengers scramble in panic, finally realizing that the dungeon was never truly cleared. A massive beam of energy slams into the ground, signaling the monster's unhinged fury, and Suzuko screams for her father's safety while the entity lunges forward to protect him. The creature lets out a deafening howl, drowning out the chaos around them, so the remaining scavengers desperately combine their powers to launch a counterattack, shouting for everyone to hold the line until the saint finally makes her appearance. But the monster brushes off their collective blast like it was nothing more than a breeze, and the crowd catches sight of a sudden, blinding light descending upon the battlefield, realizing the saint has arrived to save them just as all hope seemed lost. Yet the newcomer calmly signals for them to forget every detail of this encounter before she unleashes a wave of golden energy that sweeps across the entire area, causing the scavengers to drop into a deep, forced slumber right where they stand, leaving the survivors scattered on the pavement as the mysterious figure moves among them. Then St. Morin turns her attention to the monster, preparing to finish what the scavengers started, and she successfully seals the entity away, ordering Mika to escort the bystanders to safety. Mika acknowledges the command, swiftly moving to handle the remaining task at hand. While St. Morin smiles at the small, captured creature in her hand, revealing she found Suzuko, a distant voice calls out for Leo, echoing through the strange, glowing void, and Leo finally begins to stir, his consciousness slowly returning to the waking world. He finds himself in the arms of a mysterious woman, relief washing over them both, but the confusion sets in immediately as he tries to process who she really is. White reveals her identity to Leo, claiming she knows who he is. And he checks her for a fever, worried that she might be delirious, so White insists she is fine while standing up to reassure him, yet Leo realizes she should not know his name if these are truly her memories, leaving him to wonder if he is actually trapped inside her own mind, as he connects the dots between White's transformation and the mysterious figure she calls Sensei, before White suddenly cries out for him in the middle of their conversation, asking if they are friends while clearly sensing his growing distance. So Leo confirms their bond, attempting to keep her calm in this strange place, even though he notices that White is physically unable to walk on her own. Then he offers a piggyback ride to help her move without getting hurt, joking that she is heavy while he starts carrying her across the field, where White asks if he would still remember her if she lost all her memories, to which Leo promises to help her regain them with the aid of Sensei, although he silently questions what kind of person this Sensei actually is, and the shadows around him begin to shift into a dark, monstrous form, as a sinister presence whispers that things will not be that simple for him, revealing the monster god's influence is spreading through everyone connected to him, so the dark tendrils coil tightly around Leo, marking him as the next target. While a machine in the distance blares a warning, signaling that time is running out, the containment seal glows with a lethal energy, signaling to the prisoner that he is effectively trapped in a high-security facility, and he realizes that if he is locked up here, then Suzuko has almost certainly been captured as well, but the old version of him might have surrendered to this fate, yet he has changed since then and refuses to accept this as his ending. So he launches a sudden strike against the guards, catching them completely off guard with his newfound power, and he dispatches the security personnel with a concentrated burst of energy, effectively clearing his immediate path, noting that the fallen guards are wearing job holder cooperative uniforms, which confirms his suspicion that he needs to escape this place immediately to avoid further trouble. Meanwhile, news reports announce that Getsurin City is under restoration after the dungeon incident, though the mysterious keeper remains at large, and a saint has arrived to oversee the situation. And the guards speculate that the saint is here specifically to observe a unique monster, prompting him to wonder if they are talking about Suzuko. Then a fresh alarm blares across the building, notifying security of a containment breach in Zone 1, and the sudden sensory feedback confirms that Suzuko is indeed nearby, but his own corrupted condition prevents him from accessing the facility's data panels for more specific intel. So he starts moving through the hallways while security teams mobilize to intercept the intruder, and he taunts the approaching guards, confident that he can handle a thorough search on his own terms. Then he slips into the elevator lobby to bypass the main security dragnet where he selects the floor for his search, fully prepared to destroy the entire building if he cannot find Suzuko, and he arrives at the containment sector, sensing a powerful presence lingering behind the blast doors, revealing a terrifying, stitched-together monstrosity that forces him to question if Ryua has betrayed them to the authorities. The protagonist lets his rage boil over as he vows to make anyone who touched a hair on Suzuko's head pay dearly, and he steps deeper into the containment sector, scanning the empty hallways for any sign of his target, but the complete lack of guards or monsters makes him hesitate, wondering if the security detail was wiped out in some unseen struggle. Especially since the spiritual power signature he tracked has completely vanished, leaving him to fear the worst for Suzuko, and he grits his teeth in frustration, forcing himself to push forward when he rounds a corner to find a sight that leaves him absolutely dumbfounded, because Suzuko is not being held captive, but is instead sitting peacefully with the stitched monster, and his own disguise and calm demeanor completely shatter at the sight of them. As the monster is busy spoon-feeding Suzuko like she's a toddler, oblivious to the fact that their predator-prey dynamic has been replaced by a bizarre feeding session, then the creature spots him and immediately lunges forward with a cry of "Daddy," which sends him scrambling backward until he is literally running for his life from the affectionate beast, but his retreat is cut short by a squad of armed guards blocking the corridor. And they open fire on him, forcing him to realize this whole scenario is a setup, so he recognizes the tactical trap for what it is, even as the saint herself steps out from the shadows to greet him, mocking his power while noting that she expected more from someone capable of beguiling a monster of this level, and he keeps his cool while the creature continues to cling to him. Then the saint signals him to follow, clearly intending to interrogate him about his mysterious abilities. The saint dismisses his concerns with total arrogance, making it clear he has zero say in what happens next, noting that the 5 saints were chosen as humanity's ultimate defense against the dungeon threats, and he realizes the real reason they captured Suzuko is to track down the god of monsters itself, so he tries to press the saint for her true endgame, but she just laughs off his intensity and demands a private conversation, ordering the monster to go eat in another room so they can talk alone, and to his surprise, the creature actually obeys her command without a fight, leaving him to watch as the monster scurries off, which makes him wonder what kind of control she truly holds over such a beast, while the saint leans back and tells him to stop looking at her with such hostility, and in the background, the monster finds his mask and starts obsessing over it. Then the creature forces the mask onto him, clinging to his face with terrifying intimacy before promising to return once she has finished her meal. Then the saint suddenly drapes her cloak over him, forcing an incredibly uncomfortable proximity, and she leans in close to taunt him, asking if he's worried about her turning the girl into a monster, while she whispers that she could end his life right here without anyone batting an eye. So he finally snaps and demands that she get off him immediately, but the saint just smiles, clearly enjoying the idea of pushing his buttons even further, and he decides he has had enough, unleashing a wave of corruption directly into her, causing her to panic as she realizes her own body is being actively compromised by his power. Leo calls her bluff, pointing out that if she really wanted him dead, he'd already be a corpse. The saint retaliates with a sharp strike to his forehead, pinning him back in place, mockingly calling him a drag for not playing along with her game. She then analyzes his spirit corruption, noting how it has sunken deeper into his essence, and reveals that while her item can suppress the symptoms, only a saint can fully purge the rot, which forces Leo to realize just how much she knows about his secret history. She proceeds to recount his entire life, from his orphanage days to his illegal app sales and his desperate path as a guide, painting his past as a series of exploitations that led him to a pathetic, lonely end. Leaving Leo in awe at her ability to see through him so effortlessly, he realizes she is the saint of fate, Morin, and suspects she is using this knowledge to manipulate Suzuko, deducing that she likely intercepted intel on Suzuko's origin and the god of monsters. Morin then shifts the focus to his own history, offering to rewrite his tragic past for him, extending an invitation to join her collective and work directly under her command. She promises him a life-changing opportunity with plenty of perks if he just accepts, but Leo immediately declines, internally cringing at her manipulative sales pitch, telling her outright that he has zero interest in becoming a mere lackey. Morin acts confused by the rejection, reminding him that he desperately needs her to cure his corruption, so Leo stands his ground, refusing to play by her rules anymore, explaining that he knows her cure involves offloading the corruption onto innocent job holders, and rejects the method entirely, knowing full well how agonizing and lethal that transfer process truly is. Morin realizes Leo knows way too much about spirit corruption, and decides he is far too valuable to let walk away. Leo tries to brush off her intensity with a nervous joke, then bolts for the exit the second he gets a chance. But a golden restraint suddenly locks onto his body, pinning him in place as she refuses to let him leave. Morin demands he join the cooperative under her absolute control, insisting it is for his own safety given his unstable condition. So Leo retaliates with a massive burst of raw spiritual energy. Morin watches in pure amazement at the density of his output. While Leo screams in agony from the sheer strain of the surge, he summons a squad of spectral knights to clear the immediate path. Morin identifies the summons as actual monsters rather than simple magic. She quickly pivots back to negotiation, offering him a fresh deal. Leo listens with a sharp smirk, ready to hear her pitch. Morin offers him a 20% cut of the Black Forest loot, and promises the cooperative will officially support Suzuko's needs. Leo considers the offer, knowing Suzuko's hunger levels are becoming impossible to manage alone, but he calls her out for trying to maneuver him into becoming her pawn, finally proposing he join a private organization instead if she keeps pushing her agenda. Morin acknowledges that Leo is a tough nut to crack, but a high-ranking guard warns her not to underestimate him further. Leo stares her down, questioning if she really thinks she can hold him back. Morin pivots back to business, asking if he has any specific conditions for an alliance. Shifting their focus to the mysterious god of monsters, both realize they are hunting the same elusive entity, so Leo agrees to a nominal membership with the cooperative on his own terms. Morin accepts his demands while warning that her superiors are watching him closely, declaring herself his personal overseer and self-appointed mentor. Leo finds the arrangement acceptable as it grants him a legitimate status. Morin pulls him into a forced dynamic, insisting on overseeing his spirit corruption experiments, demanding he immediately complete a job test to finalize his certification. Leo turns to leave, placing the safety of Suzuko in Morin's hands, questioning if she will actually keep Suzuko safe while he is gone. Morin threatens him with immediate confinement if he even tries to flee. Leaving Leo to walk away and begin his assignment, where Morin meets with Mayor Fujinami to discuss the boy's potential, Fujinami insists that Leo is exactly the kind of asset they need, pointing out his recent ability to command monsters and halt the local destruction, noting that a kid with such power is a massive wild card for their future. Mayor Fujinami argues that Leo could easily turn the monsters against the city. But Morin remains dead set on bringing him into the cooperative at any cost, even insisting to the mayor that the boy is his own personal pupil. A woman in a mask cuts in, reminding Morin that Leo has already left for his test, and she calls out Morin's past attempt to save the world as a total failure, questioning why he is so obsessed with finding the god of monsters, especially when that deity discarded their own child without a second thought. The memory of that child triggers a surge of dark energy within her, and she clutches her head as the painful recollection takes hold, forcing her to realize the mask she wears was originally white. Realizing she must track down the god of monsters to uncover the truth of her past. Meanwhile, Leo arrives at the testing center among a group of other applicants, where a staff member directs everyone to wait for their numbers to be called. And Leo watches the timer count down to 30 seconds before his turn, knowing his protean accessory can shapeshift to help him pass this certification, which also keeps his spirit corruption levels at 0 while he handles the summons. Leo reflects on how different this feels compared to his days as a perpetual failure, remembering how he was constantly treated like a burden by teams who refused to recruit him. But he pushes those ghosts aside to focus on solving the mystery of his own identity, and moves forward to face the evaluation that will finally change his standing. Mike the Battle Maniac struts through the hall flanked by Keen and his goons, complaining loudly about the wait time while Keen demands faster service, and they corner a staff member to force her into prioritizing their entry, dismissing the official policy to wait for their assigned numbers despite the woman's protest. While an onlooker recognizes Mike's infamous status and is stunned by the blatant power play, and the crowd whispers about Mike's reputation just as the system calls number 30, drawing Leo forward with his ticket in hand to finally start his own evaluation, but Mike intercepts Leo to demand his number, clearly intending to steal his slot, and Leo calmly responds that he is about to enter the testing chamber, while Mike shoves past the crowd to block Leo's path into the room, making everyone wonder what the aggressive veteran is planning to do now. So Mike mocks Leo's appearance, calling him a four-eyed brat to provoke a reaction, and Leo points to himself in confusion, wondering why the guy is targeting him, while Mike demands the ticket, refusing to wait his turn like everyone else, and Mike flares up his aura, clearly offended by Leo's refusal to hand over the number, threatening physical violence if the kid keeps acting so defiant. Then Mike reaches out to grab Leo by the collar, declaring he will teach the boy some manners in front of the entire testing center, and attempts to crush Leo into the ground with his superior strength, but Leo finds the entire encounter incredibly bothersome and refuses to be intimidated. Mike unleashes a massive wave of spiritual pressure, forcing Leo to acknowledge the sheer weight of his aura, but Leo suddenly recognizes the veteran's face from a past encounter. And with a single, brutal movement, Leo sends Mike flying across the room, leaving the surrounding crowd in absolute disbelief as the veteran goes down in one blow. Even the testing officials are caught off guard, watching as debris rains down from the impact. They scramble to intervene, demanding to know why Leo has turned the testing hall into a battlefield. Ignore the chaos. Leo simply asks if he can finally proceed with his own certification. The female examiner stares in shock, realizing that a one-hit victory means his true rank is far higher than expected, and she begins to reassess his potential as he stands calmly before the machine. Stepping up to the testing platform, Leo prepares to demonstrate his actual combat capabilities. Adjusting his glasses, he focuses entirely on the upcoming evaluation process. The system confirms this test provides official recognition for job holders, granting them status in dungeons and business ventures alike. Because official certification helps filter out counterfeit abilities and secures authentic proof for those who have legitimately earned their rank, while the cooperative actively recruits these elite individuals to prepare for the inevitable fourth calamity. The test begins with a surge of energy engulfing the chamber, and Leo remains perfectly composed as the machine processes his unique data. Yet the console suddenly flashes a failure notification, signaling an error in the certification process, prompting a confused outburst from the observers who cannot believe a talent like his could be rejected. So Leo is forced to deal with the fallout while Mike continues to scream that he is a legitimate job holder who refuses to be ignored. Leo stares at the testing arena, feeling a familiar weight as he realizes this moment mirrors his past, and finally called up, he steps onto the platform ready to finish this ordeal. While the observers track his arrival with keen interest, Jenna confirms Leo has the St. Morin seal of approval, clearing him of any suspicious background checks, which satisfies the mayor enough to greenlight a deep dive into his hidden potential. The machine kicks into gear, surrounding Leo with a crackling surge of energy as the test officially starts, and he stands alone in the center while the system begins its complex scan. But the monitors suddenly flare with erratic readings that catch the officials off guard, because the data shows a massive abnormality that defies the standard measurement protocols, and Leo realizes his own spiritual power is hemorrhaging uncontrollably into the testing chamber, forcing the console to blare error warnings as it struggles to register a unique job holder's output, while the mayor demands answers about the wild surge of energy flooding the facility. The staff reports an absurd level F result, though the mayor refuses to accept such an obvious glitch, so he grabs the tablet to inspect the detailed breakdown of Leo's combat abilities himself, realizing Leo shares the same uncontrollable power profile as Hayashi Mickey, including the ability to command monsters. The final display confirms the anomaly, labeling his status as a unique job holder with unlimited spiritual potential. And the mayor debates the tactical limits of summoner-type jobs with his assistant, noting that even powerful undead sorcerers struggle to maintain control over their restless minions, while the system highlights how quickly these monsters grow into high-tier threats, leading the mayor to wonder if anyone except an S-rank like Hayashi Mickey could possibly contain a boss like Suzuko. The mayor figures that only a master capable of taming such a monster would take Leo as a pupil, and he dismisses the assistant's suggestion for a retest, opting to classify Leo as level X instead. Overriding the standard system protocols on his own authority despite the staff's obvious hesitation, warning everyone that the X identifier is reserved for unfathomable unique monsters and the legendary man who preceded Leo, while the mayor fixates on Leo's ability to command hordes and manipulate his own appearance, noting that the creature's holographic data makes it impossible for anyone to believe Leo is actually human. Meanwhile, inside the test chamber, Leo discovers traces of corrupted spiritual power lingering on the floor, so he manages to erase the residue with a touch, breathing a sigh of relief that he will not be charged for damages, and a hazmat team moves in to secure the site, quickly surrounding the area where Leo was just standing. They order Amexen to withdraw while they handle the cleanup process, leaving Leo to wonder if they are treating him like a murder suspect or just a source of viral contamination, but he brushes off the insult and heads out to collect his official test results. Unaware that in the waiting area a group of thugs is already discussing how Keen, or Leo, did not seem intimidated by them at all, the leader asks his subordinate what the plan is now that they have identified their target, and the man grins with malicious intent, suggesting they ambush Leo the moment he steps out. They argue that a guy with the rare ability to summon and control monster hordes is too dangerous to let roam free, pointing out that Leo is currently alone and vulnerable, making this the perfect window to strike. So the group coordinates their positions, preparing to intercept him as soon as he leaves the facility, watching intently as Leo finally exits the testing zone, unaware of the trap waiting just around the corner. The leader prepares to confront him head-on while his cronies hover nearby to ensure Leo has nowhere to run. The thug leader calls out to Leo, bragging about his own injury to goad him into a fight. Leo calmly asks what the guy wants him to do about it, and the thug smirks, demanding Leo just let him land one free hit, launching himself forward with a wild, aggressive strike. But Leo casually steps aside, letting the momentum carry the attacker right past him. Then Leo points out that the guy completely missed his target, so the thug shifts gears, cranking up his aura to show off his rank power, and he screams that he is about to teach Leo a lesson in pain, while the bystanders scramble away in a panic to get clear of the incoming chaos. A woman cries out that fighting is strictly forbidden inside the cooperative facility, and suddenly thick, dark vines erupt from the ground to bind the brawling thug. The attacker struggles as the tentacles wrap tightly around his limbs, while similar vines coil around Leo, holding him in place as well. Leo notes the intensity of the spiritual power and recognizes the signature, looking over to see a woman approaching them with a glowing summoning circle in her hand. This is Miki-san, and she is clearly not happy about the disturbance in her cooperative. Leo identifies her immediately. While the thug is still pinned by her summoned vines, Miki-san looks shocked to see Leo standing there in the middle of a fight. Leo greets her casually, explaining he is just here to take the qualification test, and the thug realizes he is way out of his league, deciding it is time to retreat before things get even worse. Leo explains he did not exactly choose to join the cooperative, leaving Miki-sen confused about who forced him nearby. Kin-sama observes the scene and orders his men to stand down because he knows that having Getsurin City's superstar Hayashi Miki present changes everything. The thug remains pinned by her vines, helpless to do anything but wait. Miki-san sternly reminds him that fighting is forbidden, forcing a quick apology from the attacker. Grabbing Leo by the hair, Miki-san demands to know why he really traveled here. Searching his memory, Leo stammers while trying to recall his actual mission. Realizing he came to find the student of St. Morin, he finally lets it slip. Miki-san points out that he has found the target, leaving Leo to wonder what she could possibly want. Her expression shifts to pure shock at the realization as a group of media reporters swarms them, identifying Leo as the student of St. Morin. The crowd surges forward, pelting Leo with aggressive questions about his job level and personal life. Overwhelmed by the sudden barrage of microphones, Leo internally screams at the chaotic situation. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to the wreckage left behind by the recent blood hunting event. Scavengers prowl through the ruins, searching for anything of value in the debris. They stumble upon a fallen combatant, wondering if a unique monster took him down. One scavenger notices something glistening on the body. A mysterious pendant rests against the man's chest. The scavenger quickly snatches the item, thinking he has struck gold, but his partner laughs it off, claiming it is just a worthless coin. The Coin of Fate hits its 24-hour activation mark, triggering a revival effect that consumes the artifact, and the fallen scavenger suddenly begins to glow with restorative energy. Shocking the looters as their former victim gasps back to life and stands up, the resurrected man immediately calls them out as NPCs while manifesting a powerful aura, declaring that these thieves are about to face severe punishment for touching his property. A system prompt identifies his weapon as a body dismemberment tool capable of cutting through magic. He charges toward the scavengers with lethal intent. And before they can even process the threat, their heads are severed clean from their shoulders. Finding grim satisfaction in the carnage, the man decides to test this ability on someone else, cursing the level F brat who forced him to burn his precious revival coin. While the terrified scavengers struggle to understand their floating, disembodied state, news reports flash across a screen confirming St. Morin's student just ended a battle with a single blow. The man snaps his fingers in frustration, realizing his target is now the center of media attention, before he brutally finishes off the remaining scavengers, swearing vengeance against the student. The scene shifts to the towering headquarters of the Black Owl Company, where an employee nervously enters an office to deliver a report. Akatsu stands in the doorway, clearly unnerved by the atmosphere inside. He steps further into the room, preparing to address his superior. CEO Inabashido Hayato sits at his desk, exhausted from overusing his ability, and Akatsu presents the footage of the Saint student, revealing they have been played by this kid all along. Inabashito Hayato scoffs at the footage of Leo, finding it absurd that an unqualified brat has gained such notoriety, pointing at the display to show how the kid flagrantly broke his end of their bargain, while in the background a subordinate is busy gutting a captive to extract dungeon items. The CEO mutters about Leo's sheer audacity, his eyes hardening with a dangerous, predatory intent, asking his underling for the next step. A sudden movement erupts from the prisoner on the floor, catching the subordinate completely off guard as the victim lunges forward with a hidden blade. A violent struggle ensues, the captive striking back with desperate, feral energy against his tormentor. The underling gasps in genuine alarm, caught in a trap he never saw coming. Pinning the man down, the prisoner unleashes a surge of raw, destructive force. Limbs are severed in a flash of crimson as the ability tears through the room. Hayato watches the display of power with grim amusement, noting the irony of his own troubles, ordering his men to drag that brat before him immediately, refusing to tolerate any more excuses. Shadows and energy swirl around the CEO, his aura intensifying as his patience finally snaps. He demands that the messenger relay a blunt ultimatum regarding the boy's secret dungeon activities, explaining that since even a saint would struggle to handle such corruption, the kid's methods are clearly unique. The subordinate scrambles to obey, stammering his compliance as he retreats from his boss's wrath, leaving Hayato to brood over the threat that has now become a personal, unavoidable nuisance. The scene cuts to a spectral figure haunting Amic Leo, threatening to stabilize his spirit through force if necessary. Meanwhile, the boy remains oblivious to the impending hit, relaxing in his current circle of associates, where the realization finally hits him that he has been played, leaving him desperate and cornered. Amic Leo is busy getting his cheeks pinched by a girl who clearly does not care about his personal space. She keeps teasing him to smile while hanging all over him, but Leo is having none of it. That's when Suzuko interrupts the moment with a burst of pure, unadulterated hostility. Shouting at the girl to get off her daddy, clearly ready to throw hands over the boundary crossing. The girl does not even flinch, instead deciding to mock Leo by showing off a clip of his recent interview, trying to change the subject. She offers him a snack, but the mood is still tense. Suzuko is the one who steps up to accept the offer, looking hungry for some energy. Leo politely declines the treat, telling Suzuko to just go ahead and finish it all herself. She happily takes the offer, smiling wide as she starts to chow down. The atmosphere shifts briefly as something feels off, leaving them all slightly unsettled. Leo shakes off the weird vibe, turning his attention back to his digital display. The screen reveals he secured the Blood Hunter prize, granting him 3 mysterious magical boxes. Those boxes hold either S-rank items or crafting materials, though Leo is not exactly betting on his own luck. Remembering the wolf hunt, he realizes he never actually collected the loot from that fight. Wondering specifically about the staff that Wolf was carrying, he presses Suzuko for details on whether she managed to snag anything from that massive creature. Clarifying that the wolf handed the spoils over to a woman with red hair, Leo realizes that woman must have swiped the loot right out from under them. Ryua steps in to identify the thief as an associate from the Black Owl Company. While the girls start bickering over names, Leo is left to process the fact that he's been robbed blind. Suzuko reaches into her own mouth, offering up a mysterious item she recovered. The object turns out to be a macabre doll, pulling a visible reaction from the group as she presents it. She produces a doll dressed in royal attire, handing it over while seeking approval. Ryua catches sight of the strange prize, her expression tightening with immediate concern. Questioning the origin of such a cursed-looking item, she demands to know exactly where it came from. Leo explains that he found it in the dungeon as a clue left behind. and a sudden wave of pride washes over Suzuko for the praise. A notification pings on Ryua's phone, announcing that someone named Jenna has arrived with a visitor for Leo, acknowledging the alert. She prepares Leo for the incoming meeting. Akatsu appears on a holographic projection, relaying a message from Inubashiri about a pending deal at the Black Owl Company. Tension spikes as Leo realizes Inubashiri is threatening to expose secrets. Leo brushes off the threat as a simple item exchange. Though Ryua remains visibly skeptical of the arrangement, debating whether to accept the meeting, he decides that bringing Ryua along is the safest tactical move. With a smirk, he rallies Suzuko for an outing, clearly planning to use the situation to his advantage. They step out into the evening light, heading toward the towering corporate headquarters. Mickey suddenly joins them on the street, questioning Leo's intentions for the meeting. She references the Lady Saint's strict orders to protect her student at all costs. Laughing off the intensity, Mickey promises to handle things while keeping out of his way. She notes that she even changed her outfit specifically for this assignment. Leo finds Morin's foresight suspicious, realizing she must have prearranged this surveillance. He confirms Suzuko is safely in tow before they enter the boardroom to face the waiting executives. Nubashiri's monitor tracks the group entering, confirming the presence of an unexpected woman in the party. The executive signals his subordinates to bring them into the room immediately, settling into his seat. He greets Leo and his companions while pointedly ignoring their earlier request for privacy. Leo brushes off the invasive surveillance and demands to know why they are being questioned about the woman. Mickey steps forward, attempting to explain her sudden appearance as a simple secretarial role. Her presence is clearly tied to the Lady Saint, a fact that does not escape the company's notice. Inubashiri ignores the distraction, demanding an update on the items they were supposed to trade. Leo pretends to be confused. Acting as if the previous transaction was already settled, the board erupts into a verbal confrontation, with Leo feigning ignorance over the missing shipment. Tokura loses his cool and snaps at Leo, crossing the line of professional decorum. Inubashiri silences the room with a single, cold command. Tokura immediately recoils in terror, realizing the massive power gap between him and his boss. Inubashiri mocks the idea of a saint student causing such a scene. Leo watches Tokura crumble, quietly reveling in the internal chaos he has successfully sown. The executive stands up, cutting through the posturing to demand a straight answer. Leo finally drops the act, offering a hint about Ryua's involvement in the blood-hunting dungeon. Inubashiri recognizes the name, noting that Ryua was once part of his own Genikamen unit. The truth comes out that Ryua stole the spoils from the dungeon under Leo's direct orders. Akatsu is immediately summoned to the table to account for this massive failure. Leo monitors the fallout, watching as the connection between his actions and the company's losses finally clicks into place. Akatsu sits at the bar, keeping a low profile while the boardroom fallout continues to simmer. She pulls up a holographic display to initiate a call with someone off-site, proposing a deal involving Amik's missing items to someone who seems all too interested. The person on the other end panics, flatly denying any knowledge of the situation or Ryua. Meanwhile, other agents identify Suzuko on screen, confirming she is currently holding the items for her father. Akatsu presses the contact about their potential connection to Ryua, demanding total honesty. The contact maintains their ignorance, dismissing the guy in question as just a random job holder. They casually taunt Akatsu, suggesting that killing him would be a PR nightmare for the company. Akatsu considers the logic of that warning, realizing the corporate risk might outweigh his own frustration. He abruptly cuts the call, signaling to someone in the room that he needs a private conversation. They step into a separate office, leaving the rest of the staff to deal with the ongoing investigation. A female colleague tries to intervene, but the target waves her off. Clearly unbothered by the looming threat, sitting down in the quiet office, Akatsu demands to know exactly what is going on. He questions the true nature of the bond between this person and Ryua. The target remains smug, telling Akatsu that if he really wants answers, he should just ask Ryua himself. Akatsu loses his patience with the attitude, demanding that the games finally come to an end. He flexes his status as a special job holder, flooding the room with a heavy, oppressive presence. The target just laughs off the display of power, mocking the attempt to intimidate him. Akatsu shifts tactics, sliding a stabilization device across the table to ensure their spirit does not snap. He tosses the item over, finally offering the leverage needed to keep the conversation going without a fatality. Akatsu questions the motive behind handing over the device so easily. Leo reveals the vial contains a rare, refined material. These crystals were digested by Suzuko and are highly effective at stabilizing a special job holder's spirit. Akatsu demands to know the price for such a powerful commodity. Leo brushes off the suspicion, asking Akatsu if he is finally ready to talk business, noting that such a rare item would drive other special job holders to violence just to acquire it. Leo lays out his two choices of either working with the cooperative or finding a private buyer. Akatsu points out that the product is unlicensed and needs to be tested to prove its worth. Sensing that Leo lacks any fear, Akatsu decides to test the substance himself. The vial is opened as Akatsu prepares to channel the raw energy. A massive surge of spiritual pressure erupts from Akatsu, flooding the entire building with intense power. Leo watches on, clearly impressed by the overwhelming reaction triggered by the crystal. The building shakes as the sheer scale of the energy release begins to affect the environment. Nearby combatants are caught in the blast as the sudden spike in power disrupts the area. Mickey cries out in alarm as the shockwave rips through their current position. Bystanders scramble in confusion as Mickey appears, enveloped in a glowing green aura. Observers realize the source of this massive spiritual power is none other than a high-level threat. The realization settles in that the situation has escalated far beyond a simple negotiation. Mickey unleashes her full capacity as the fabled superstar of Getzerin City. She immediately targets her opposition, vines constricting her reach while everyone else tries to escape. Mickey spots the writhing vines filling the room and realizes the figure standing within the haze is Hayashi Mickey. But a man blocks her path, claiming he has already taken care of the boy she is looking for. Mickey loses her composure at the news and prepares for a lethal strike. She surges forward with a massive green aura while the man stands his ground, surrounded by dark red energy. A voice cuts through the tension from behind, telling Mickey to stand down because everything is actually fine. The spirit of a terrifying, spectral entity manifests behind the speaker, emphasizing a dangerous new power. Mickey halts her attack and demands to know if Leo is truly unharmed. He questions how Mickey knows so much about him. Wondering if she did some prior digging, Leo brushes off the accusation, claiming their current dynamic is all about mutual understanding. He produces a vial containing the substance. Asking if the quality meets her expectations, the spectral entity looming behind Leo suggests that Mickey should simply become his partner instead. Leo reveals the substance is derived from Suzuko's own digestion, laughing at the thought of how the boss would react to such news. The boss walks toward them, clearly concerned and checking on Leo's condition after the chaos. Leo keeps his cool, telling the boss that he is ready to move forward with their business. A smug look crosses Leo's face as the negotiation reaches its critical turning point. He offers the boss a 70-30 split of the total profits to seal the deal. They finalize the agreement with a firm handshake. Leo expresses his genuine excitement about the new partnership, while the boss watches him walk away, still visibly uneasy about the dangerous man he just aligned with. Leo explains why he's keeping his new partner close, showing off a vial of stabilizing substance that lets him use his powers without any side effects, and he lets the energy surge around him to prove he is finally at full capacity. Though he cautions that they still have plenty of work left before they can actually celebrate, because he admits he does not fully control the source of this power yet, so he warns his associate to stay cautious since the kid previously tried to play them for fools. But the boss dismisses the idea of capturing him and risking another disaster, noting how a dungeon incident in Getzerin City brought the Saint student into the fold, which revealed the kid's true spiritual strength during their encounter, and the boss reflects on the overwhelming force he felt radiating from that boy, realizing that the monster backing him up is far more dangerous than anyone imagined, making the kid an irregularity even more volatile than the boss himself, leaving the underling to process the sheer scale of the threat they are dealing with, while the boss reaffirms his plan to invest in the kid for his own long-term gains. Shifting back to a meeting at the Job Holder Club where his men express concern about the Saint student, where the leader insists they need to recruit high-level talent immediately to keep up, claiming that the kid is hiding secrets that every major player wants to uncover, and he throws his head back laughing at the absurdity of the situation, which forces his subordinate to stand his ground, warning him not to mess around with such a dangerous game. Sitting at the table, the visitor leans back with an unsettling grin, then his fist slams into the tabletop to kill the laughter, demanding to know what is so funny while looming over the guy, and suddenly the room floods with armed guards looking for a fight, telling the uninvited guest to vanish before things get messy. But the visitor just smiles, asking if they have really already forgotten him, which triggers a sudden, sharp flicker of recognition in the man's eyes, forcing the suit-clad leader to order his men to attack immediately. Even as the guy in the middle tries to call for a pause, the visitor just watches the chaos with an amused, cold expression, and the guards swarm forward with weapons drawn in a desperate rush, letting him activate a high-level magic device to sever their connection, which unleashes a flash of blades that slice through the room instantly, leaving the man with the ponytail completely baffled by the sudden shift. While the leader in the suit watches his men lose their footing, as the guards collapse to the floor, their combat abilities completely cut off, the visitor explains he only did a little bit of surgical work, and the leader stands up, impressed by the display of pure skill, asking exactly what business a high-level job holder has with his group because he wants to join forces to hunt down the Saint student. The leader realizes Keen is actually the famous Level S Luxter, so he shifts gears to propose a formal deal on the spot, while elsewhere Mickey checks in on her current job holder ranking, and Felmina reveals she is officially a Level S powerhouse now, which leaves Mickey genuinely impressed by her overwhelming status, since Felmina radiates a wild energy after consuming the Whisper Flower's core, a method that somehow links her evolution to a rare job card, even though they realize this unique awakening process cannot be easily duplicated. So they head to an address provided by the Black Owl Company, driven by Mickey's growing desire to confront someone who crossed her, and they brush off the need for backup before stepping into the fray, where Ryua sits alone, calmly nursing a drink in a low-lit bar, seemingly unbothered by the rowdy crowd trying to keep up with her, as she calls for another round without a hint of intoxication until Mickey finally tracks her down and corners her at the counter, causing Ryua to stop mid-sip and recognize the face from her past, while Mickey greets her with a sharp and hungry grin, arriving with Felmina and their silent, ghostly companion in tow. But Ryua immediately bristles at the unwanted interruption and demands their business, just as a local drinker attempts to intervene between the two women. The random bar patron tries to block Mickey's path to Ryua, prompting Mickey to snap at the guy to keep his mouth shut. And the group settles around the table where Ryua is sitting, while Ryua keeps eating her cake and demands proof that she stole anything, causing the man with the glasses to flash a dark, knowing smirk, as he questions the nature of the bond between Ryua and this girl, leading Ryua to pointedly label their connection as that of bitter rivals, and the tension in the air spikes as they lock eyes across the table, while their companion tries to keep everyone from starting a full-blown bar fight. Ryua just leans in and challenges them to try taking the loot back, so the man with the glasses warns Suzuko to stay away from the dangerous woman, and Suzuko reacts to the warning by agreeing that Ryua is indeed bad news, which sets Ryua off as she threatens the man for corrupting the girl, leaving the rest of the group to awkwardly watch the chaos unfold, until a newcomer in a medical sling steps into the middle of the scene, and the man identifies himself as Amek while asking for Leo. So the man with the glasses turns his attention to the stranger, while Amek explains he is there to drop off a specific delivery, and Amek summons a swirling magical vortex right in the center of the room, as massive tentacles burst from the void and begin tearing the bar apart. Ryua and her companion realize the bar is literally exploding, as a massive, concussive blast tears through the room's structural integrity. While a shadowy figure stands on the catwalk, smugly declaring the job finished, and the man on the phone confirms the target is secured before promising a payout, ordering his hired muscle to handle the cleanup while he counts his hypothetical coins, gloating about the massive fortune he expects to make from selling off the captured student, though the captive in his grasp is revealed to be Mickey, who is currently being throttled by the massive, pulsating tentacles of a summoned beast. And the kidnapper laughs as he drags his prize deeper into the gloom, leaving behind a trail of smoke and wreckage in the hallway, while the thugs reveal their true, monstrous nature with glowing eyes and shifting limbs, and the green, slimy appendages begin ensnaring everything in their path, which draws the attention of the man who just finished the business deal, as he turns to see the chaos spreading through the facility. While Mickey struggles against the vines and questions if her attackers are even human, and Suzuko coughs through the dust, realizing that Leo has been abducted in the confusion, prompting a sudden, sharp realization from the woman in the glasses, who accuses Ryua of being behind the kidnapping, only to be met with a cold denial, while a survivor calmly points out that their friends have already been dragged away. And the woman in the glasses can only grit her teeth in frustration at the total loss of control. The woman in the glasses realizes the threat is far from over, and she rallies the others to stand their ground against the encroaching vines, but the attackers swarm the group with the clear intent to abduct them all, forcing the team to pivot immediately as a blade strikes from the shadows, so she parries the incoming assault with a sharp blast of her own energy, which surges through her body as her eyes ignite with a piercing azure light, and she launches herself into the fray to create a perimeter around the group, while she extends her hand to focus the raw power crackling at her fingertips, manifesting a glowing blade that cuts through the surrounding chaos with ease, as her companion watches, stunned by the sheer power of this high-level display, but she dismisses the praise and orders the team to rescue Leo and Suzuko. So her partner reluctantly agrees to focus on the mission at hand, while she drives her energy into the ground to seal off the path, and she brushes off the residual sparks, hoping the fallout remains contained, but the enemies are already scattering into the darkness to avoid her reach, which marks the end of the skirmish as the area finally goes quiet, while Akatsu surveys the scene and dismisses the unconscious boss as too fragile. And the captive girl murmurs in her sleep, craving something more than just air, but Akatsu hushes her instantly to keep their presence hidden in the shadows, and he forces the boss awake to prepare for the next phase of their plan. Akatsu warns Tokura that a magical formation is keeping him restrained, while Tokura recognizes the captive girl and questions if the boss has lost his mind again, but Akatsu laughs off the suggestion, claiming he no longer answers to any company. Tokura realizes the ability used here is not a standard skill found in Black Owl, and he demands to know if they are just after money, yet a subordinate interrupts to inform Tokura that their leader has arrived. So the guards step aside as a powerful figure moves to take charge, revealing an old rival wreathed in energy who still holds a grudge over a past fight. Tokura identifies the attacker as the one who previously used that unique skill. And the man boasts that they intend to control dungeon monsters through a new cooperative industry, taunting Tokura by pointing out he is in no position to refuse their demands, before explaining that their formation is strong enough to withstand a level attack. Then the enemy lunges forward with clawed hands to dish out some serious pain. His strike carries immense force straight toward his target, but Suzuko suddenly intercepts the assault with her own raw power. And the resulting clash of energies creates a massive shockwave across the room. The attacker coughs up blood as the recoil hits him square in the chest. He staggers back in disbelief, demanding to know what kind of monster that girl really is, while Suzuko warns him not to hurt her father, her aura flaring with lethal intent, and Tokura watches in shock as Suzuko breaks free to protect her own. Suzuko taunts her enemies, daring them to take what they want. And a monstrous entity manifests around her, radiating a surge of raw, dark energy. The mercenaries panic as they realize they are outmatched by summon, so one of them desperately calls for backup while feeling the massive pressure. A mysterious figure senses the familiar power from afar, plotting to capitalize on the chaos. Mickey recognizes the signature as a monster's spiritual power originating from a past dungeon. She immediately identifies the source as Suzuko, wondering how the girl tapped into that level of strength. Mickey moves with incredible speed to close the distance. Arriving on the scene just as the battle escalates, she summons the Black Dragon to join the fray, directing the beast to hunt down their target, and Mickey commands her team to advance while the dust settles. The monstrous entity guarding Suzuko looms over the battlefield, as Suzuko dismissively belittles the strength of her opponents. She unleashes her summons to tear through the enemy ranks. One of the mercenaries attempts a desperate counterattack, charging at Suzuko with everything he has left, but his strike is completely nullified the moment he gets close. Suzuko reveals her multi-eyed manifestation, silencing his arrogance, and the battlefield is consumed by the overwhelming force of her true power. A familiar face emerges from the haze, claiming to have returned from the grave. The massive entity guarding Suzuko recognizes him immediately and asks if he should be dead. He dismisses the question by clarifying that while he died once, saviors are not confined to a single life, radiating intense energy. He declares himself a cut above the common savior. Dark, shadowy figures surge forward to engage the monster. Iria arrives on the scene, ordering her group to prioritize neutralizing Suzuko's summon. Realizing this new arrival is a savior like Luca, the realization hits hard. The system displays a cooldown timer for his summon, leaving him in a tight spot. He watches the enemy launch an airborne attack. The impact shatters the ground, forcing a desperate defensive maneuver, blocking the heavy strike. He admits the attacker's strength is no joke. Eyes fixed on the chaos, he calls out to Suzuko. The monster retaliates with a lethal swing, driving the mercenaries back. Witnessing the monster's dominance, the savior decides to shift his tactics toward the human targets. Suzuko screams for them to clear the area. The savior taunts his opponent, daring him to witness the true extent of his power. Energy gathers in his palm, swirling with potent force. A massive shockwave erupts, slamming directly into the monster. The sheer magnitude of the blast catches him completely off guard, shouting a warning. He desperately urges Suzuko to dodge the incoming devastation. The antagonist drives his fist into the target, mocking him by claiming he is nothing without his monster. And Suzuko lunges forward in a desperate attempt to protect her father, her eyes glowing with a terrifying, feral intensity. She shoves the protagonist aside to intercept the incoming assault. While the antagonist demands the secret behind his power, the protagonist ignores him to initiate a new summon, and the antagonist recoils in shock as a surge of energy erupts from the monster's hand. Despite the setback, the antagonist rallies his mercenaries to swarm the area, but Suzuko launches herself into the fray to keep them away from her father, warning the attackers to stay clear of her territory. While the protagonist tells Suzuko to pull back, he begins systematically taking down the mercenaries with blinding speed, and the system counter climbs rapidly as he eliminates more targets, gathering raw energy in his hands to fuel the next phase. He hits a count of 10, triggering a massive fusion sequence, mocking his opponent for questioning if he can survive being consumed. A monstrous entity emerges from the void to envelop the antagonist, and the creature's tentacles crush him as his screams fill the air, leaving Suzuko to watch the scene unfold as the threat is neutralized. The glowing seals hovering in the air capture his attention, and just as he turns around, Felmina and her companions arrive to find the scene already cleared. He scans the area for other threats while questioning if more enemies are nearby, but Felmina dismisses his concern, noting that Mickey is busy stalling the rest of their opposition outside. A sinister laugh echoes through the space, catching everyone off guard. Dark energy floods the environment, dragging them into a hidden mental plane, where Tokura finds himself held captive by a mysterious woman while Suzuko appears to assist him. Felmina of the Apparition Association reveals her presence alongside demonic entities, claiming Suzuko is one of their own. And while he attempts to process this sudden abduction, Felmina declares that she and her forces are here to serve him.